Aaron, thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
In the tradition of this show, what do you recall as your first memory?
My first memory. One of my first memories that comes up for me was when I was in the car with my mom, and I remember being in a car seat and opening one of the car door, like the side car door, and the car door opened, and then my mom got scared and I think stopped the car. That memory, whether it's like a real memory or if it's something I heard of later on in life and then thought it was my
Yeah, for
memory,
sure.
I'm not sure, but I that because I've thought about that before. Like, what is my earliest childhood memory? The other thing I remember is I had to get a shot when I was like 4 or 5 years old, and I hid underneath this like couch, and my mom was looking for me, and I could see her walking around in the room going, "Aaron, Aaron," opening up the closet, and I so bad did not want to get like a shot in the butt, you know?
Yeah.
So I remember just hiding in fear, and then
Wow.
she found me, and then I got brought to the doctor's office, and I got a shot,
Yeah.
like vaccinate, whatever it was,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? I remember those 2 memories very clearly. Um,
What was the emotion that was attached to the first memory? Because it seems like an interesting
like like
juxtaposition.
like I did something wrong, like fear,
Mm.
probably even the second memory as well.
Yeah,
You know, it's interesting that my mind goes to those like memories because I'm sure there were other
for
memories
sure.
where I was playful, having fun with brother or sister, but I definitely those are probably strongest imprints.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and the thing that's interesting about that first memory is it's like it feels like such a beautiful representation of, like, seeing a third door, like that expression where, like, a
yeah,
lot of people think, like, it's only option A or B.
yeah,
It's like there's always a third door,
yep,
and it's like but the third door is often it's an option in a situation most people don't consider, and that if it's presented to them, it's kinda scary,
yeah,
and so that's such a beautiful symbolic memory.
yeah.
Where did you guys grow up, and what was kind of like your early life environment like brothers and sisters, mom and dad, married, divorce, like what was kind
Yeah.
of the milieu?
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Vegas. So,
Nice.
born and raised
Interesting.
there. My mom and dad were together for the first 5 years of my life. I am the eldest, and I have a, younger brother that's 2.5 years younger than me, and then I have brother and sister on my mom's side that are same mom, different dad, and then 2 sisters on my dad's side that are same dad, different mom. So from 0 to 5, it was my brother and I. Around 5-ish, my parents divorced. After that, my dad, a few years later, met my ex-stepmom. She was my stepmom from when at the time I was about 8 or 9 years old until I was about 16 or 17. And the energy in the house then was she was very controlling.
Mhm.
She was very kind of like manipulative and an angry person. Um, and she started taking control of just everything. So my dad being a firefighter, he was gone half the
Oh,
time.
wow.
He was gone half the time, there half the time. Very good at his work, but also would be kind of passive in relationship.
For sure.
So he'd kind of allow this person, my ex-stepmom, to run the show. So from about 8, 9 till 17, my brother and I weren't allowed to have friends.
Whoa.
Yeah, we had to earn going to school activities. We were normally locked outside doing yard work all day.
Wow.
To get enough food to eat, we would normally sneak to the other side of the house to like get it so that we could like have
Wow.
enough. I know it sounds like a victim story. My YouTube
No.
audience is used to hearing this because, I wouldn't be where I'm at today if I didn't
Yeah.
go through all of this. But this is what happened. It was, yeah, like having to earn to go to school activities, not allowed to listen to music really. So I knew from
Wow.
about 8 or 9 years old until about 17, 16, 17, I knew a lot of restriction. So there's a
Mm.
lot of restriction, a lot of tuning myself to a woman to know like how do I need to be to get by? And it was a lot of energy around like managing how I'm showing up and like so that I can like survive, you know? So that was my life from that age time period. Around 17 years old, my dad divorced my ex-stepmom. My grandma got involved and was like, if you don't do this, so it kind of woke him up. And then all of a sudden, 17 years old, I had freedom. I was allowed to have friends. I was allowed to get enough food to eat. I was allowed to watch television, allowed to listen to music. And it was like a whole new world.
And was there no adult now because your dad was still working the same schedule? There was just the absence of the tyrannical ex-stepmom?
He was there. I mean, he was there half the time, and then she was running the show because she was home a lot more. And he was there and aware of it when he was, but like she just was allowed to get a lot of that power. And then at 17, then my dad, even though he was a firefighter, we lived at my grandma's house.
I see.
And my grandma was like a therapist.
Oh, wow.
Who was like really liberal and like, let us do whatever, let us do whatever. So we went from one extreme to the other. And one thing I'll never forget is like, as much as it was like a whole new world for us to have all this freedom, there was something about that freedom that felt sort of scary, like almost anxiety.
Yeah.
Like, even though like the dynamic was, because we actually lived in a nice house in Vegas and we had like pigs and goats and animals and stuff,
cool.
which is random because it's Vegas, right?
Yeah.
But we'd get up and take care of them in the morning.
Interesting.
And then we were always like doing yard work and stuff. So I learned like hard work, but because of the dynamic was like, if I wanted to watch television when my dad wasn't home and my ex-stepmom wasn't home, my brother and I would have a remote with our fingers on the previous channel part of the remote. We would have the TV on, and then as soon as the car pulled into the driveway, we'd push the button, throw the remote, and run outside.
Wow.
So that was the dynamic. But what was interesting is I remember in a moment when my dad divorced my ex-stepmom, and there was a moment where I recognized that like, even though I feel so much more free, there's something about this that feels scary because I don't know where my limits are. Like I knew what my box was back in that house. I knew I could sleep good at night because I knew where my box was.
Interesting.
And I knew what I was allowed and not allowed to do. And now that I'm free at 17 and I'm allowed to have friends, that was when my personality came out. I was a very quiet kid until like in high school, people probably saw the way that I was like my junior, senior year. And it was like, came out of nowhere. All of a sudden I was able to have a personality. And it wasn't until actually even after high school that I really like got confident in who I was. So I'm like a completely different person. And then they probably see me on YouTube now and they're like, what the heck? I was so different,
Yeah.
But I knew where my box was. And now that it wasn't there, I started to feel anxious. So that anxiety was something that subconsciously, what I could tell after that happened, I would attract people into my life to replay that same level of control over and over again. So for me, the story was around women, right? Like a woman is trying to control me, I must fight for freedom.
Yeah.
So after my ex-stepmom left, first girlfriend that I got, I had a girlfriend for 3 or 4 years, controlling, jealous, I'm too much. There was an energy where I felt like I had to suppress who I was and I had to fight for freedom. So that happened. 4 years later, broke up with her, let it go on too long because that was a pattern that I noticed my dad would stay in. Yeah. And then after 2 weeks after breaking up with her, I got transferred to a better shoe department because I worked at Nordstrom's and women's shoes.
I love this.
So the manager of that department was the same as the ex-stepmom. And once again, things weren't fair, just like in childhood. We would go to HR, she'd get away with everything, just like when I was in high school or like with the ex-stepmom, I could say something to someone, I'd get in more trouble, same thing. And it wasn't until I started doing the deeper healing work and I actually forgave my ex-stepmom, had a spiritual awakening, and then felt grateful for my past that then, like as I started to do the inner work, I started to more so find that safety within and forgive. And from there, then it's like, as I dropped the story, I stopped attracting the same level of dynamic over and over again because it was just a replayed dynamic that kept happening.
Yeah, it's like that boss fight had been completed. Oh, no, you can move to some new.
Yep.
So I want to go back quick because one of my favorite questions to ask people is, what do you remember being like the first story, either in the form of a book, a bedtime story, a TV show, or a movie that like captured your
Mm,
imagination? Because I have a sister that's 10 years younger. My parents got divorced when I was 10
yep.
and dad was gone and mom worked a lot. And so I would help raise, my
Yeah.
new sister. One of the things I noticed is like when she was like 2, she saw Finding Nemo for the first time
Yep.
and she demanded to rewatch it like over 200 times in the course of
Wow.
like 2 years. Without going too deep into her personal story, the mythic architecture of that movie was it revealed things about her life that she was too young to have to know.
Yeah.
And like it and then kind of like the root of this podcast is I find that we each have like a fate that we have to play out. It doesn't mean that we have to like
Yeah.
that are we all have a certain set of bosses we have to face. And it's like there's something inside of us that when we see it reflected through story, we become like obsessed with that character. So I'm leading the witness too much. And so I'm
Yeah.
going to back off. What was your favorite story as a kid?
If I thought of my favorite story, the one that comes to mind is a very common story, but it was Lion King.
That was mine too.
Really?
Actually, yeah.
Really?
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
What are the chances?
So who did you identify most with? I mean, and it's probably Simba, but what parts of that myth like really captured you?
The dad dying.
Mm.
It was an emotional moment, I remember.
Yeah,
And it
fucking
was
Disney back then, man.
Yeah.
Killing parents.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, it definitely was. It was Simba. It was that moment when Simba was with Mufasa. The dad's name was Mufasa, right?
Yeah.
Not Scar. But yeah, it was that moment and that sadness from that moment. And then I think there's a certain level of grief, even as I look at my life now, of like different moments of grief that I've gone through and acceptance and like energy like that, that maybe that somehow connects to in some way.
For sure. Like for me, the divorce that happened with my parents when I
Yeah.
was like 9, 10, it ended up with the dad leaving, like with
Mhm.
my dad leaving. And so there was a very clear like, oh, dad's dead. He
Yeah.
wasn't actually dead, but he was gone. Okay, so I'm going to invite you to tell us a bedtime story like we are like a niece or a nephew.
Yeah.
And we're like, tell us the Lion King. So to preface this, and we're not asking you to tell it historically beat by beat accurately,
Uh-huh.
but we're asking you to like be in the energy of like, it's like 10 p.m. You're with some nieces and some nephews and they're like, tell us a bedtime story. You're choosing the Lion King as the inspiration.
Okay.
And the invitation is to don't explain it to us, but like tell it to us like you're the Unk and you're not washed, like you're an unwashed Unk and you're going to share with us just this bedtime story.
Okay, so I'm literally sharing the Lion King.
But you can riff on it in any way you want. Like really like feel into, you're just in the bedroom with, your nieces and nephews. It's not a fucking test.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I'm going to use this as the inspiration to tell them a bedtime story.
Okay. So once upon a time, there was a new baby cub that was born that was going to eventually one day become a prince and then a king of the kingdom of all the animals and of all of the area in which the lion baby cub was born. And the mom and dad are very proud. The mom and dad are very excited to reveal this baby cub to all the animals that are around. And on the top of this beautiful rock is the mom and dad and the baby cub. And there is a monkey there that is the seer of the realm, that is able to be the storyteller, that also is able to manage and display what's going on in the kingdom. So the monkey picks up the baby, whose name is Simba, and puts the baby up in the air, and there is this magical moment where all the animals underneath are in celebration of this divine new baby that is now being revealed to the world, and everybody that is there finds safety and finds a certain level of calmness rush through their bodies as they recognize that there is the safety of the realm in the fact that now there is this new baby that is being born, that is going to be growing up under its parents in order to then be turning into the leader that will lead the realm. So the baby is celebrated, and from there, the people rejoice. And yeah, I'm not sure how much how long does it go?
You can feel into, as the storyteller, what is the, like, what I would imagine is that if you were telling that story to kids, they'd be like, "You can't end there,
Right,
Uncle
yeah,
Aaron.
yeah.
You gotta," yeah.
Yeah.
But you're crushing it.
So okay. So as everybody rejoices, things go back to normal. And then a few years later, we have a baby cub that's now turned into a little bit older, starting to learn the ways of the way the world works, learning the ways of the parents, and is learning how to exist in the world. The baby also wonders, or the cub also wonders, Simba, what is my purpose here? Who am I? And will I ever live up to my dad's desire for who he wants me to be? What about this pressure? Or, of course, the baby doesn't say that, the baby cub doesn't say that, but there's this feeling of pressure and desire to become who the cub is supposed to be. So the cub makes friends. The cub is, Simba is enjoying hanging out with all the other animals, even has a couple play friends. And what ends up happening is, playing one day with these friends, Simba eventually gets into trouble for going out of boundaries from where he's not supposed to go with one of his best friends, Nala, I believe.
I think so.
Yeah. So while he's with one of his other cubs friends, Simba realizes he's crossed the boundary, and things get kind of scary because he's in a territory he's not supposed to be in. And eventually what happens is he ends up getting saved just in the nick of time from one of the other watchers of the realm, which is a bird. And eventually what happens is he ends up going back to that of his parents, and he actually gets in trouble. He gets in trouble from his dad and his mom. His dad and his mom were worried about him, didn't want him to get hurt, and told him that from now on, you won't go beyond these boundaries. You will stay within this specific area, and that's the way it's going to be. And if you go out of it, you will be in trouble again, and you won't be allowed to go out again. So he gets grounded. He's not allowed to go out. He has to stay within his confines. He has to stay and hang out where he always has. But there's more that he wants to explore. There's a whole other world out there that he's simply not allowed to go through because his parents won't let him, and he doesn't understand that. So eventually what he does is, once again, he's playing with Nala, and there's curiosity that comes from a certain area where he sees some animals he's never seen before. And he decides that him and Nala are going to go and they're going to explore. And as they go explore, they get into, once again, territory they're not supposed to be in. There's big animals, there's new terrain, there's new types of plants and leaves he's never seen before. But as he gets down and even further away and starts exploring this whole new world, what happens is there's this loud rumbling noise. All these animals start running. And at first, he's never heard it before. Never heard that of a stampede of animals that are coming out of no direction. Where are they even going? And all of a sudden, what happens is there's a big, almost avalanche of animals, big animals, 10x the size of Simba and Nala, come trampeding down and end up on the path that they're on. Simba gets to the side, hangs onto a tree, and as there's all this noise happening, there's no sign of what is actually going to happen. But eventually, after what feels like hours, there's silence. There's a whole bunch of trail of wreckage that's happened from all these these animals. And what happens is, in the moment, there's some more animals that end up coming as one last wave. And when that happens, Nala and Simba find themselves on the edge of this precipice. And there is this fear that comes because they feel like they could fall into this pit. They could get ran over by these animals. And what happens is, in the final moment, Simba's dad, Mufasa, comes out of the side and is able to hold on to that of Simba and bring him up so that he doesn't fall onto all the other animals. And while he's there, there is also this dynamic that he wasn't very aware of, which is that Mufasa's brother, Scar, who is the uncle to that of Simba, was the one that lured him there. Simba didn't know it at the time, but he got lured into this experience. And Scar has always been jealous of Mufasa being the leader of the realm, maybe even jealous of Simba's eventual rising to the top. So what happens is, as Mufasa is getting ready to fall, trying to get up, who could easily normally get up, Scar comes into the way, and what ends up happening is Mufasa ends up at the last moment falling into the stampede of animals and gets run over and dies. In that moment, Simba cries, doesn't even know how to feel, never experienced anything like that before, and feels the grief and sadness behind what is life going to be like without dad? What is life going to be like? Who am I? And also just a general shock and grief for the loss of the person he's always looked up to. So what happens from that point moving forward is ends up going and doesn't know how to process what's happened, feels like something is missing. And as he becomes older into a teenage years, he ends up going off and feels kind of like not himself, feels so sad in the hurt of what happened that he ends up going off and goes off into the forest, goes off into the jungle, and ends up meeting two other animals that are both very playful animals, a pig and what was the other one?
A lemur,
A
I
lemur,
think.
yeah.
I think.
Ends up meeting two other animals that teach him a philosophy called the Kuna Matata, which means there are no worries in life. And what happens is Simba goes through an entire experience of letting go of his worries, letting go of the pain, being able to have fun and connect to a new part of the realm that is like feels freeing and allows him to forget of everything that happened back in the realm. So he goes through a process of having fun, learning this new philosophy that there are no worries, and life feels much lighter until one day when he meets Nala again, and he starts to be curious and wonder what he's missing back in the realm. And one night while he's out, he meets that same monkey who's like the seer of the realm, who reminds him of who he is, has him look up to the stars. And as he looks up to the stars, he realizes that what the monkey says is that one of the stars is his dad. So he realizes that when he looks up the stars, he's looking at something that he thought he lost. And in that moment, there's a remembrance that happens, and he remembers who he is. He remembers his power, and he decides that what he's going to do is he's going to go back into the realm, because from what he's heard from Nala, the realm has been taken over by Scar, who is a very dark, who has been bringing darkness upon the realm, who's very selfish, who doesn't do what's best for the realm. And everything that Simba knew is now under this control and this spell of this person that has very dark intentions. So what ends up happening is he decides that he's going to go and he's going to take back the realm for himself so that he can put in order and allow everyone to feel safe again. And what he does is he goes back He has to battle Scar. He has to go through a whole bunch of trial and tribulations of learning how to maintain his power, forgetting that he's been a lion the entire time. No longer is he a cub. He's now a strong lion that has the ability to fight for himself, to protect himself. And he ends up going in. He ends up taking back the realm. He ends up uh, actually, in the end, trying to save Scar. But Scar ends up, due to his own demise, ends up falling to his death. But from that moment on, he's able to reunite with Nala. He's able to become the king and queen of the realm, and he's able to establish order. And deep down, he knows he's made his dad proud.
Fucking crush that, dude. It's like you watched the movie yesterday. Incredible.
It's funny. It took me a moment to get back into it, to like remember like the energy of it, you know?
Yeah, when you were telling the part about Mufasa dying, my eyes started to water and I started seeing clips of it.
Yeah.
What do you feel like was your equivalent moment of that like death of innocence and being pushed into like adulthood? You know, like the psychological equivalent of the death of the father in The Lion King.
Interesting.
Like, what age and what event?
What age did I have where like I felt like I was an adult, like the loss of innocence?
Not so much an adult, but it's the poignant end of childhood, because that's when he gets cast out into being like his teenage years.
Yeah.
But it's like it, and for most people, that's the end of innocence, because most people are still adolescents, and we have very few adults out here, you know?
Right. Yeah, I'm trying to think if it's a time when I was a teenager or a time when I was in my 20s, you know? I mean, for me, I mean, I want to say that like when I was 26, 27 years old, which is probably quite a bit older, I guess there's one quick one and one larger one maybe. There was a moment where when my dad divorced my ex-stepmom, I had all this more freedom. And it actually was when, you know, as a firefighter's kid, I had to tuck in my shirt, comb my hair. I had a certain way to present myself because I was presenting myself to my dad and to like the world, right?
Were you still in Las Vegas at this time?
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't move away from Vegas till COVID times.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's when I moved to Sedona and then to Austin. But there was a moment where actually it's a very it's kind of an not embarrassing story, but there was a moment where when I turned 18 years old, I had to kind of establish the frame with my dad that like I'm gonna go do what I want. I know you're not gonna like it, but this is what I'm gonna go do. And I had to like establish that frame. And it actually was because I'd started to have friends at that point. I was turning 18 years old, and it was I actually wanted to go to a strip club.
Let's go.
So I was like, so with my dad, I was like, okay, so I'm going tomorrow with my friend, and we're going to the strip club because I'm turning 18, and there's nothing you can do about it. You know, like it was just me and my dad thought about it for a minute. I was like, okay. Like it was this moment where I was like, I wanted to establish like I'm growing up and I'm no longer tucking my shirt. I'm no longer comb my hair to the side. I'm going to go do this thing because I want to, because I'm 18, you know? So that was probably one of them. The other aspect though, I think for a long time, I was in the autopilot mind of like, I think the story of childhood, which are like that things aren't fair. This stuff's happening to me. And 27, 26 years old was when I decided that I was going to go daily on YouTube and working a 9-to-5 job selling women's shoes, went daily on YouTube. And that mentality of like, I'm going to figure this out no matter what became like an energy where I started to take my destiny into my own hands.
For sure.
And I started to see myself as a hard worker. My identity started to transform at that moment, especially once I got momentum. Because within 3 to 6 months, within 6 months, I had 100,000 subs on YouTube. And things started growing very quickly. And that was like, okay, now I got to figure out how to make money so I can quit my job. But like, it was so empowering, but there was like a shift in my energy at that point, because no longer like one of the most biggest shifts in my life was when I put my 2 weeks in at that 9-to-5 job I had. It was like I put my 2 weeks in the 2 weeks before the Conor McGregor Mayweather fight.
Oh, wow.
Because I worked in Vegas, right? It was a commission job. So I wanted to work that day, but I wanted to open that day. And I wanted that to be my last day of ever having a 9-to-5 job. So I put my 2 weeks in. People, like, man, I didn't really get along with the managers that well because there was a lot of corporate politics.
For sure.
And I worked at Barneys, New York at the time in Vegas. And there was a lot of like, there was like this whole union thing of us like fighting against that. There was this whole thing because of like how corrupt it was. But eventually I put my 2 weeks in, and it was like a whole new world where I felt free. It
Wow.
was like the biggest shift in my life. I always tell people, like, you can go from making like 50K a year to $1 million a year. It's not as big as a shift as when you go from working for someone else to working for yourself,
For sure.
because time is
100%.
like the most valuable asset, you know? It's such a, I went from 75K a year, or probably 60K a year, to making like 70K my first year on YouTube, figuring out like marketing and stuff,
For sure.
but I worked for myself.
Yeah.
And that was the biggest level of freedom I'd ever experienced. But that was like an initiation. That was like, that
For
was where
sure.
things really shifted for me, and I started carrying myself different, and I related to people differently. But yeah, before that, and it was also like I was shedding like people pleasing tendencies and
For
other
sure.
tendencies. So even I guess you could say I was a late bloomer, 27 years old,
Yeah.
but that was probably one of them too.
Beautiful. 2 questions that come up is, where did you get, or where do you think the identity of like, I can figure this shit out started? Because a lot of people just for whatever reason don't have
Yeah.
that. And then part 2 is, what I find with most people, especially in our early 20s, especially being in this culture, and I would imagine even more so being like inside of the cultural story that's implied by Las Vegas, which is like,
Yeah.
what tragedy happened in your life that got you to like wake up enough to try something like, I'm gonna go all in on YouTube? Because what I find for most people is that something has to punch us in the face. Like, that's
Oh
for sure
yeah.
what happened to me,
Yeah.
to wake me up out of the like, oh, wait, this track I'm going down that like I got sold by
Yeah.
culture, where like to be a good man is to
Mhm.
do something I hate
Yeah.
for the entirety of my life until I can retire. Like, so the 2 questions are, where do you think the like, I can just figure this the fuck out, like, started or came from? And 2, what preceded the going daily on YouTube that kind of like got you to even try something like that?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so the first one, becoming resourceful, I think maybe part of my childhood wounding is that because no one really gave me anything, like I kind of become self-reliant to where if I wanted something, I'd have to figure it
I
out for
see.
myself.
Yeah.
And one of the things I was really passionate about in high school, because I didn't have that much freedom, was one, I did band camp. I was in band.
What
So
instrument?
trombone.
Nice.
So I played trombone. I played trombone in band camp for like 2 years, and then I got bored. It was in middle school, and then in high school for like a year or two. And ended up going to a new school that was built, so their band department wasn't that great. So I went from like a really good band department at this one school in Vegas to like this one that was like a whole bunch of people that just weren't that great. So I didn't feel challenged. But what actually happened was, I had a moment when I was giving an English presentation in ninth grade where I didn't do my homework. I got in front of a whole entire 40 kids in school,
Cool.
and I froze on stage. I froze in front of the class.
Wow.
Didn't know what I was gonna say, froze. It was embarrassing. I like blacked out. I don't even remember what happened after that. But what happened after that is I felt there's so much shame there that I said, next year I'm going to learn how to public speak. I'm gonna take forensics debate. And in forensics debate, it's competition debate.
Yeah.
And the next year in school, it was like at the new school I went to, my sophomore year was the new school that was built. And band was getting boring. And because I was allowed to have like that extracurricular activity of forensics with the ex-stepmom thing, all of my energy went into that. That was my
Interesting.
outlet.
Yeah.
So I became super fascinated with being good at debate. And these
That's so
debate,
cool.
it was competitive. So you'd
Yep.
go to these tournaments, you'd have certain topics. You don't get to pick affirmative or negative, but then you'd have to debate. And
That's so cool.
and it was so much fun. And I went, and I wasn't that great at first, but the moment things shifted for me was this moment. I go into debate. Every month there was a debate at a certain school. The parents are the judges. And I went in, and I wasn't very good at first. There was this moment, though, where I learned how to use my voice. The same way you learn in band. There's crescendo where things go up. There's decrescendo where things go down. You can talk like staccato. You can talk more fluid. I learned how to use that with my voice.
Interesting.
So one of the debate tournaments, I remember there was this, I think it was Foothill High School. No, it wasn't Foothill, it was Bonanza. This one high school I went to, there was the first round was like a certain way. The second round, I implemented this change and I started to win. I started winning because I started to move people with the voice.
Yeah.
And it was dynamic. There were moments where, you know, you have to be able to think on your feet. You're cross-examining. Like I loved that.
That's so cool.
I became super fascinated with it. And that's all I would focus on for like, you know, leading up to the next tournament. I would study more, like literally 20 hours more than the average kid because I wasn't allowed to watch TV, wasn't allowed to have friends, wasn't allowed to do anything.
Wow.
Eventually, I ended up training my little brother, 2 years younger than me. I trained him, and I got him to a place to where the next one that we went to, he won first place in novice.
Wow.
So he got good because I was like, I was writing his cases, helping him with his cases, like just
That's cool.
I just became super fascinated with it. So that was a moment where I realized anything I want, I could get like kind of obsessive about and figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
And I just always kind of had that mentality that like, I don't know if it's like a willpower thing. But there was a moment there where I decided I'm going to figure this out.
Yeah.
And that ended up, of course, probably going into me being on YouTube and all of that stuff in some way. But the moment for me later on where I said, screw this, I'm going to figure out YouTube was corporate politics at Barneys, New York, selling women's shoes. I wore a suit to work. It'd be very slow.
Wow, you wore a suit.
No, I had to wear a suit to work.
I need to see the picture of Aaron with his shirt tucked in, and I need to see the picture
I got them somewhere.
Suit. Wow.
I got this somewhere. I had to wear a suit every day to work. I don't wear suits anymore because I'm I don't have to if I don't want to, you know? But there was this moment where I always had a thing with upper management because I never really trusted authority because of how I grew up, right? So I'd always attract people I felt like I had to fight for freedom against. Whether it's partially true or projection, that was always the dynamic.
For sure.
So at Barneys, New York, the managers I had, there was always like one narcissist. There was a store manager. I actually had a dream about him last night.
Whoa.
I'll go into that in a little bit,
Yeah.
maybe. I'd be curious as to your perspective on this like reoccurring dream that I have.
Oh, I'd love to.
Yeah. You were telling me earlier about that. I was like, okay. I got pulled into the office because all of a sudden they started to crack the whip. And they're like, okay, it was really slow at work a lot of times. You'd be out on the sales floor sometimes for 4 hours with not a single customer. Because it was slow. Retail was dying off. They're $1,200 Louboutin shoes. You know what I mean? Like, so what happened is I'm at that job. We would take turns in the back, being on the floor, not on the floor, and just being our phones in the back. Well, one day, it was always okay for 2 or 3 years I worked there. All of a sudden, they're cracking down on it. I get brought up to this room called the Situation Room.
No way.
Yeah, it's called the Situation Room. And I get brought up there, and it's the store manager, the department manager, and the HR manager in a room. And we sit down.
So just a real quick,
Yep.
What is your physiology like? Like when you open the door and see those are the people?
I know I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
I'm getting written up, you know? So it's a little bit of fear, and like, I know I'm going to be talked down to, you know? And I go into the room and I sit in front of them and there's a projector onto the wall and there's a 5-minute video of me on my phone. So I could see this video looking down at me. I'm sitting in the back stock room. Someone's on the sales floor, granted. And granted, most of our business was done through our phones. I was on Instagram.
For sure.
I was scrolling on Instagram. And what happened is they show me the first 30 seconds of it. And I go, okay. I say, I get the point. And I say, if you're going to, you know, we want you to look at this video. So after about 30 seconds of watching the video, I look to them and I go, okay, I understand. If you're going to write me up, you can write me up, but I get it. They go, we want to watch it just a little bit longer. So what they wanted to do is they wanted to be more painful to make their point. And that felt very demeaning to me. I was like, and then after another 10 seconds, I said, listen, you can write me up. I'm leaving the room. I'm not going to continue watching this. It's like so demeaning, you know? Yeah. So what they ended up doing is writing me up, telling me if I did it again, I get fired, blah, blah, blah. In that moment, it reminded me, I'm a big Harry Potter nerd.
Oh, cool.
So in Harry Potter, there's this one like where Harry has to write on this quill, I must not tell lies, and it like gets into his hand, and he just has to keep doing it. He doesn't say anything or whatever, but it's like, that's what it reminded me of in the sense of like, just sit with it. Just how long do I have to write? And she says in the Harry Potter book, like, until it sinks in. I was like, keep watching until it sinks in. And so when that happened, I made a choice that one day I'm going to work for myself.
For sure.
One day I'm not going to be talked down to like this. So it was that was one of the triggers where then a few months later, I made the choice. I'm going daily on YouTube until I'm a full-time YouTuber. So in February of 2017, I started making daily videos. And within a month or two, some videos started to pop off. Within 2 or 3 months, I was gaining about 15, 20,000 subs a month. And it was like things were growing.
So cool.
And I'm like, okay, how do I turn this into like an income, you know? And the right books that I read, and I learned internet marketing. And then within 6 months, that's when I put my 2 weeks in and was able to quit. So yeah, it was a mix of like, I can figure anything out, especially if I become obsessive about it.
Mhm.
And then the second thing was that that moment of pain was necessary for me to get sparked up to say, I'm going to do this thing.
100.
And I then committed. So it came from commitment. And then that really shaped my identity, because for a long time, I was kind of waiting for things to happen.
Yeah.
I remember at one moment, I thought in my mind, I had a spiritual awakening in 2012. It's 2016, 2017.
I want to hear that story.
Of
the
course, yeah.
spiritual awakening.
So I'm like wanting to, I forget where I was going with that. I had my spiritual awakening then.
The committing became like a new identity.
Yeah, so I was waiting for something to happen. I learned about all these spiritual things, and I was like, in my mind, it was almost like the Abraham Hicks manifestation thing, where like, I'm gonna think about it and it's gonna happen. Think good thoughts, just think better thoughts. And I was like, I'm gonna like help, you know, in my mind, what was gonna happen was I was going to help Tony Robbins with shoes.
Let's go.
And Tony Robbins was going to like see this potential in me. And he was going to go, Aaron, you have all this potential in the world. Here's a stage of people. You can do this, you know? And I was going to be like, yeah, I'm ready. You know, and that's literally what it was. And funny enough, about 4 or 5 months before I went full-time daily on YouTube, I helped Sage Robbins, his wife, and their assistant, Mary. And what was funny is I helped both of them.
Whoa.
And I remember like, is it coming true?
Yeah.
And it was like this manifestation like thing.
Yeah.
Whereas like, it's like I wanted to be put on. It was entitled, you know, and it was a certain stage of development.
Wanting to be put on, man.
Yep, that was it.
Yeah, that's huge.
It was like someone's gonna put me on, you know, and then I realized eventually no one's gonna put me on. I got to do this for myself. It's about who I become. So. I also had a moment with Jack Canfield, who was also in the movie The Secret, ironically enough.
Interesting.
You know, so I had all these. What's funny is years later, like small world now, you know, it's been years since that happened. About 2-3 years after that, I started growing on YouTube. I got invited to a Jack Canfield thing in Costa Rica. And then recently, this will be really random, but I saw that Mary, the you know, Tony Robbins like assistant, follows me on Instagram.
Yeah.
So I'm like, it's funny how full circle things come.
Sure.
Not that, you know, it's just like
for sure
that energy, but it didn't come from anybody putting me on, giving it to me. It came from just lots and lots of repetitions of putting myself out there and becoming the person, because I chose to embody that versus like that energy.
100%.
So yeah, I think that's like a certain stage of awakening, is like the whole manifestation, create my own reality, you know, which is like a whole thing of itself, you know.
For sure.
But yeah.
So I'd love to hear what your spiritual awakening was in 2012. And then I'd also love to know, what did you find were the first couple of things in that first 6 months of going every day on YouTube that like got a disproportionate attention?
Yeah. Well, okay, so the first question was what? It was
your spiritual awakening in 2012?
Yeah, so in 2012, long story short, because it can be quite a long story. And but basically, I was working that 9-to-5 job at Nordstrom selling women's shoes.
How old were you?
I was 20, so in 2012. So I was like 22, 24 years old. And at that time, I felt trapped in that job. The manager was the same as my ex-stepmom. At that time, I had been taking Adderall for about a year. So because I didn't have a personality up until I was about, 18, 19, all of a sudden, like 19, 20 years old, my personality starts to come out. I'm very outgoing. And people would say, what's wrong with you? Why do you have so much energy? So eventually I went to a doctor and they're like, oh, you have ADHD. I said, oh, okay. Yeah, something's wrong with me. I have ADHD. So I started taking Adderall. Wow. So I was taking Adderall, selling women's shoes. And had
you gone to college?
I went to college for like 2 years. off at like 2 years, and then I was going for political science. I thought I wanted to be a lawyer.
Interesting.
Didn't really like it. The most successful person in my family was my uncle, who was a business owner. He had no education, and he was the most successful one. And I was like, I want to eventually do that.
Interesting.
And I always knew that by 30, in my mind, that by 30 I'll be a millionaire. Always kind of knew that, you know. And it was just always in the background though. You could tell how you know you're gonna do that. I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I just always felt that, you know. I just felt
sure.
like by then I'd have something figured out, you know. So yeah, 24. I'm working that 9-to-5 job. My manager is the same as my ex-stepmom. Felt kind of trapped. I felt kind of like a leaf in the wind around the substances I was taking. I'm taking Adderall at the day, which has the harsh side effects of you can't eat or sleep very much.
Sure.
So at nighttime, I'm taking cannabis. I'm smoking and eating edibles so that I can eat. So during the day, I'm on Adderall. During the night, I'm on a cannabis. And I just felt like I was like on whims of it. You know, I just felt like I was a leaf in the wind, needing that.
For sure.
And then there's the pain of this manager that I don't enjoy, that I'm kind of like under the reins of. And I didn't like the side effects of the Adderall and the fact that I needed the cannabis. So I went online and I saw this thing about meditation. And it was like the science of meditation. And that if you were to meditate, you could get to a place where you don't need Adderall or anything. I was like, oh, that's very interesting. So what I began doing is I began grounding myself, just like barefoot in grass. And what I would do is I would then go through that of, I would ground myself and I would meditate. And first couple days of meditation didn't really do much for me. I had seen the movie The Secret in 2007. My mom showed it to me and I thought it was so cool. I was like, I'm going to think negative thoughts. I'm going to manifest something bad. I don't want to think negative thoughts. So I was very reactive to thinking. But the game changer for me was I actually learned to observe my thoughts. I did this one candle. It was a meditation with a candle. Eyes that wanders, a mind that wanders. So I would just stare at this flame and I would observe my thoughts. And after about a day of doing this, like for 10 minutes a day, I started to feel different. And it was like I started to feel spaciousness inside of me. I started to feel more present. On a scale of 1 to 10, my base point was probably a 3. If I would smoke or drink, I'd go up to like a 5 or a 6, and then I'd go back down to a 3. After meditating, I started to feel so different, started to be present. I started to feel like I was about a 7 or 8 out of 10. I literally felt high.
Wow.
And I remember walking around my room thinking like, is this feeling going to go away? Like, it's too good to be true.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And what ended up happening is that became like the new base point. Of course, you could drop down to a 4 or 5, but like the new base point changed. And within 2 weeks, quit taking Adderall, stopped smoking within 2 weeks.
Wow.
Went through a whole transformation where I felt completely different. And then I went through kind of like an ungrounded phase of awakening.
Hell yeah.
The ungrounded phase of awakening is pretty out there.
Yeah.
I was in 2012, I was like, it's almost an embarrassing story. But in 2012, after that awakening, I went vegan like within a couple weeks too. So I started losing weight. My dad, everyone thought there was something out there. Everyone thought I was doing more drugs when I was doing less. But I started to become very present. That was like a whole new world, because then I was like, oh, we're spiritual beings living temporary human experiences. And I started.
What were your influences at this time? Either like from books or podcasts or YouTube? Like who were the teachers / points of view that were like in your head?
At that time, it was a mix of, but at that time, I'd probably listened to quite a bit of like the old school manifestation stuff, like Bob Proctor.
Yeah.
Think and Grow Rich was like huge. I would like watch these old school videos of black and white of him going like, "We come now." And
interesting. I've never seen the recordings of him.
Yeah, they're actual recordings.
Interesting.
I would eat in the morning, and I would watch these things before I went to work. And it was like that. That was a huge thing.
That's
Tony
cool.
Robbins has always been like a really big inspiration of mine. Some more esoteric stuff, like channeled like stuff that are kind of woo-woo.
Like who? Or which ones?
Bashar
Yep.
is definitely probably one of the #1 influences. Like from back in the day. Like
sure.
I thought it was so kooky back in the day, but the information resonated.
For sure.
And Seth. What was it? The Nature of Personality, The Nature of Personal Reality was a book that was a very powerful influence. It was years later that I found Autobiography of a Yogi and some of those
Cool.
books. But those I grew up like going to like church and stuff like that, but I
Mhm.
never really vibed with it that much because my stepmom was the one forced us to go to church, but she
Was
wasn't
it Catholic or Protestant?
I think
Do
it
you
was
know?
like I think it was like I don't know if it was Lutheran or
Okay.
one of those,
Yeah.
like one of the Christian ones.
There's so many.
There's so many.
Yeah.
But yeah, I never um it was actually yeah. It was actually, if I'm being completely honest, it was actually a DMT experience.
There we go. Let's go.
Yeah, it was a DMT experience in 2012. Actually, yeah, shortly before that. So when I worked that job at Nordstrom's, I watched A Spirit Molecule with Joe Rogan,
Mhm.
and something in my mind sparked with that.
For
This is
sure.
all coming back to me now. And there was this lady that I worked with, and she had a boyfriend that just got back from Peru with actual legit, like, because that's the hardest thing, right? Finding a good source for this,
For
whatever this
sure.
is.
Yeah.
So in 2012, or 2011, probably 2011, there's this guy who was an ex-UFC fighter. So it's this really intense dude.
Incredible.
Yeah, and I was in Vegas. So what
Incredible.
I do is I talked to, she was my old manager at Nordstrom's, and I talked to her about, I was like, yeah, I feel called to do this stuff, and like it changes your consciousness and blah, blah, blah. And I always knew when the timing was right, it would happen. And then eventually, like 6 months later, she's like, oh, my boyfriend just got back from Peru. And I'm like, Peru, I feel a connection to Peru. Like, that makes sense. I end up going to this guy's house and to get it. And he had this weird rule that looking back was probably not healthy, like the healthy rule or whatever. But I went to pick up like probably $200 or $300 worth because I was going to give it to my caregiver at the time, because it's back when I smoked. So the guy would legally like get stuff from.
Yeah.
And I was going to give him some of it too. So I go, and the guy's like, if you're going to pick up this much, you need to do it with me, like here. And I'm like, wait, what? So
What is the logic of that rule?
I don't understand. He's like, I want people to know that it's not as big of a deal as like people make it and blah, blah, blah. He's like, I've done it 50 times. I'm like, okay.
That's
I'm like
so weird.
wanting to get it though. So I'm like, okay. So I go, and I'm there with him and his cousin, who I've never met these people. And he then, is like, okay, well, he loads up this bong that's literally like
Yep.
so tall that I couldn't even light it. It was
Wow.
like a monster bong.
Yeah.
And I got up there and I'm taking this big hit of this DMT, and it's like I can see it. And he's like, okay, what you're gonna do is you're gonna take in a huge hit and you're gonna hold it as long as you can. So what I do is I take this big hit. I can see it cherry, which is
Yeah.
when I knew he was trying to blast me off. So as I'm like, oh my God, this guy's trying to blast me off. Like he's just seeing how far I can go, So I take in this big hit, and then what I do is I sit and I hold it as long as I can. And as I exhale, I then like drift backwards and I fall into this like state of consciousness.
Yeah.
And it's hard to explain what happened, but ultimately I went to a place that was no time and no place. I experienced something that was beyond the five senses that you can't put words to.
For sure.
And it was, I remember seeing like all these paradoxes. I saw these bright beings that were also shadows, which makes no sense. I did this thing. I remember feeling the sensation on my face where it was like, shoo, 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 like 7 times. And I did this thing. And what happened is when I was doing that, I actually pulled out my earring on my left earring.
So
It was
you
in
were
a stud.
actually rubbing your face with
I was
your
actually
hand.
I was actually doing this thing that I don't even know what I was doing. My eyes were closed. It was like, shoo, shoo, and I pulled out my left studded earring. It was like a fake cubic zirconia like earring that I pulled out, because afterwards I had to find it in the couch. And I basically went away for about 30 minutes. He says normally it's 15, 20 minutes. I came back like halfway in and then went back into it. But the very first thing that happened is there was a life review. So what happened was there were like these crumbled up pieces of paper that would uncrumple, and then I would experience what someone else felt from my doings. And once I got the message, it would then crumple back up and then uncrumple to another experience.
Wow.
I went through that multiple times and then experienced like, it was so overwhelming to understand what I experienced because there were layers to it. But I remember coming back afterwards and it just, everything felt different. Like
For
I
sure.
felt like I was kind of in my head and I wanted to get into my body. I remember going to the bathroom to like splash water in my face. I'm like, I feel so different. And I went back and sat down And the guy there was like, I've seen like 25, 30 people do this before. I've never seen someone react the way that you did. He goes, you cleared yourself like 7 times. And I've never seen that before. Like, you reacted very differently. And I never really knew what that meant until years later when I actually had a session with Bashar, which I'll talk about. But yeah, that happened. And because it was like beyond the 5 senses, and it was just like, what I realized in that moment, the feeling that I had is that right now I'm awake somewhere else, projecting my consciousness here. I think this is the total reality, when in fact, like, I'm simply like project my conscious, like, we're all here dreaming this dream, and at the end of our life, we wake back up into a higher state of consciousness that's beyond time and space. So that feeling, that like almost knowing, and that sensation beyond the 5 senses was so intense and powerful that it made me realize in that moment that like there's more to life than the 5 senses, than what I can taste, hear, smell, and touch. So that was like a big epiphany unlock for me. And for months afterwards, I just was kind of integrating that. But then eventually in 2017, that's when I went daily on YouTube and, you know, started like kind of like sharing what I was learning and just studying books and spiritual texts and connecting ideas together. Because ultimately, I think that's why people follow me on YouTube. I would share these kind of like complex ideas, but make them simple and easy to apply. So like, how do you connect ideas together in different spiritual lessons and make it like applicable for a layman? That's kind of what I did. And on YouTube, I was making different videos, and then certain videos I'd feel more aligned with than others. And then eventually that's how I kind of found my lane on YouTube of like what people want. It was like this mix of like what people wanted and all of that. So anyways, that was the spiritual, that happened probably before the spiritual awakening. The other thing that happened is I forgave my ex-stepmom, because I was grateful
pre or
for it.
Post DMT?
I can't remember, but I think it was maybe post, because my energy started to change. But what happened was I realized I was so grateful for my awakening to like this new reality that like I realized that if my ex-stepmom didn't happen when I was a kid, I wouldn't be where I'm at. So what I used to have pain around, I now felt in a weird way grateful for. And I also realized, like, not that this made it right, but I realized that what my ex-stepmom went through as a kid was the reason she did what she did. Like, she was abused by her dad, and her dad was like a erratic alcoholic that like beat her. So her reaction to my brother and I, like that, I understood.
For sure.
Even though it still wasn't like the inner child part of me was like, this is great. But, you know, but I knew deep down that like I don't know, I just understood it more and I was grateful for it. And in that gratitude, it was like there was more of a release. And then from two weeks after forgiving my ex-stepmom, that manager got fired for something stupid.
Wow.
And she worked there for 20 years.
Wow.
And she got fired because she sent an email. There was a lady that was pregnant, and she sent an email about something that basically they had no choice but to fire her.
Yeah.
And we went to HR to her. Like one time she came up to me and she was grabbing like receipts out of my back pocket. And there was customers there like, what the, why is it? Because it looked like she was grabbing my butt, you know, like grabbing my ass. And it was on camera. And I'm like, I could have gone to HR right then and probably gotten her fired, you know, but I didn't. But like, there were a whole bunch of times she could have, but then she got fired because she made one comment in an email about a lady being pregnant, you know? So it's like, it was very interesting how that happened. But that happened once I forgave my ex-stepmom. Yeah. Which is like, you know, which is very interesting because I think reality does kind of shift at the degree to which we do our inner work. But then it's also kind of narcissistic to think that I like, for sure. You know, so it's this weird self-reflection thing, because there are also 10 other people in that department that were all under the spell, you know, all put up with it, you know. Whereas if we didn't normalize that energy, we wouldn't put up with it. Yep. Like, I remember this one guy came in for a job interview once. His name was Roland, and he came in and he got like a job interview, and he got the job, and within 1 week she did this thing where she like talks down to you and like starts like you getting used to like the dynamic. And after her talking to him for like 2 minutes like that, he goes, "Why are you talking to me like this?" He's like, "You don't fucking talk to people like that." And he walked out on the job. I've always respected that because it's like
Wow.
that was not equal to his way that he was going to get treated, and the job
100%.
wasn't worth it.
100%.
We got paid like $30 an hour commission-ish, like if you equate it out, which back in the, that time was like good.
For sure.
$30, $40 an hour. So like we keep the job because we'd rationalize it. This guy was like, screw that, and he walked out. So it's interesting because I think once we learn certain lessons, there's a certain like capacity we have for what's
100%.
acceptable or not,
100%. Like, so a quick coincidence is 2011 was when my kind of like spiritual awakening, you could call, I really started to get momentum. The like inception point was doing DMT.
Oh, wow.
It was my first time doing DMT. I got connected by a friend where I lived in Harker Heights at that time. That's about an hour north of here in Austin. And so at that time, I drove here to a stranger's house who I didn't know. And I ended up having to do it in his house.
You had to do it.
Yeah. Like, I think what he told me is he wouldn't let me leave the house with it because, it's like contraband. And so like I had to pay for it there and I did it there. So I just think that that's another interesting coincidence between the two of us. And I eventually want to get to like what is the next major like mythic beat in the story of your life after you started to get the momentum on YouTube, but before we get to that, I would just love to know, you said that you had a period of not being particularly grounded. What were some of your most deranged experimental thoughts of like, maybe reality is this, because like a thing that I really struggled with for a while was what philosophy calls solipsism, which is the belief of like, you're not an actual true independent point of view. You're a part of my apparatus.
Yeah.
And the producer is a part of my apparatus. And it's really just me, baby. And it's like, that's a quick road to psychosis for sure. So like, that was one of my examples of like, when I was waking up to like, what you're speaking to is like, there is an uncanny, what Jung would call synchronistic effect that internal states appear to be able to have on external states.
Yes.
And modern Western psychology wants so badly to gaslight us and say, no, there's nothing there.
Yeah.
But it's like every tradition in the history of recorded and oral history has some confessions on this dynamic. And so before we get to the next major beat in like your mythic unfolding, what were some of your most unhinged thoughts during your own grounded period?
It's embarrassing. One of them is in 2011 and 2012. Okay, so 2012 was when I left that job. I ended up eventually leaving that job and at Nordstrom's and just literally walked out. One of the reasons I walked out is during the awakening, I had this ungrounded kind of like belief system where you get on the internet and you start learning about all these things, right? So it becomes a whole new world. And my discernment wasn't maybe as strong there.
For sure.
I was a huge Terrence McKenna fan.
Me too.
So there was this belief that in 2012, we might ascend. Did you think that too? Or you knew about it?
I didn't think we would ascend. I thought like, ain't no one gonna be able to tell me what to do because there ain't gonna be nothing to tell me what to do. Like I had no, I was kind of tangentially aware of, have you ever read or heard about the story that is in their book called The Brotherhood of the Screaming Abyss?
No.
So where Terrence McKenna kind of started on this whole path is that him and his brother went down to South America with a group of like botanists and they were trying to find magic mushrooms.
Yep.
They find like a field where it's just like the only thing growing there are psychedelic mushrooms. And for I think like 2 weeks, they're just eating it every day.
Yeah.
And the group mythos kind of converges on the belief that like when they're all super blasted, they think that they're seeing Terrence's brother actually manifest this black, like what like Western esotericism would call ectoplasmosis. It's like this thing that can happen in seances and shit. where they actually purport it is a physical substance that can come from the spiritual realm. I have no idea. But that within the black thing that was coming from a sound he was making with his throat, it's like they all got super weird. Like imagine being in the jungle with Terrence McKenna for like 2 weeks and just doing mushrooms all the time. They would get to this point where they believe that if they held a certain type of like humming note, and I might be getting like the technicalities are wrong, but the spirit of this is accurate, that they thought they were heralding the end of the world.
Yeah.
And that it was happening through Terrence's brother. And Terrence kind of got, or actually, what is his brother's name?
Dennis?
Yes, Dennis. Where he really got lost in the sauce for a while. And Terrence, being the older brother, saw kind of how far out his brother was getting. He kind of reined in the whole mythos.
Yeah.
And so knowing that story, I didn't think there was any type of like, we're going to ascend to a thing. I thought like things are going to be crumbling apart.
Yeah. Which they kind of are in a way,
For sure.
like time in afterwards. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, there were like videos. I remember there were videos on YouTube of Terrence McKenna talking about it. And there's almost like this whole thread and belief system of like, there were a lot of people that believed this, you know? So it became like, oh, we're in the know, being spiritual, that there's this basically shift in consciousness happening on the planet. We came here for the shift in consciousness on the planet. And 2012 was like this marker where things will be different after that, you know? So in that belief system, it was a very ungrounded segment that I went through where I literally just went into work one day, like months before, December or whatever it was that came up. And I just said, screw it. Like, I'm not coming in tomorrow. I was tired of, after that manager left, there was another manager that came that was less bad, but still somewhat similar. So I was still not happy being there necessarily. So I ended up not even putting my 2 weeks. I just left. And when I left, it was like, it just was like, money doesn't really matter. I had a nice Acura TL that I really liked. I let it get repoed. So I had like, that's how much I believed in it at the time. I was like, screw it all. Money's not real. For sure. Yeah. So it was like very ungrounded. So after that, that happened in December 2012, like nothing happened, obviously. And from there, it was like, there was definitely there. You start going down the conspiracy theory rabbit holes, right? You're like, oh,
what were some of your favorite? Yeah.
I mean, there's at that time, this is back in 2012. I remember reading a lot about, this is really out there, but kind of like the David Icke stuff back in the day, like that there are people on the planet that understand that, like the stuff that there's some stuff that I believe could be somewhat true.
For sure.
I believe that on Earth, I believe we are eternal spiritual beings living temporary human experiences. I believe that we forget who we are when we come here with the intention of maybe remembering who we are. I believe we're all connected. I believe that what we put out is what we get back. And I believe that there are people on the planet that understand this.
For sure.
And that if you can keep people in fear and anger, they're much easier to control.
For sure.
And as consciousness on the planet continues to raise, if you can keep people in fear and anger, they're easier to control. So it's almost like there's a certain level of understanding of that, because the more consciously aware people become, the more they take their power back.
For sure.
And I believe that if we came together using the power of group meditation and unified intention, we could completely transform the planet together because of the coherence of the planet. It doesn't take much, like many people in coherence to outweigh chaos and like negative energy.
Interesting.
But
cool front.
But with that, like I believe, so with that, like, how deep does it go? Are there reptilian, like more interdimensional beings that are like from different family systems using people as puppets to I don't know.
For sure.
That stuff gets really out there. And even if it is true, it does. There was a phase during 2020 when everything was happening where I started making content that was a lot more much more polarizing, because I felt like what was being portrayed wasn't actually accurately what was happening. But from that, it created so much my dreams started getting weird. I could feel people projecting stuff at me just because I had a large following. And it was like, I don't really want to, this maybe isn't my purpose so much to like like make people
sure.
aware of this dynamic, this exact, there's
For
people
sure.
that do that. That's their thing.
That's really interesting.
So I ended up kind of pulling that back a little bit, but I think that ultimately there are people on the, like there is someone from my life, though. It's a whole larger thing. We don't have to get into the whole story of it, but there is someone in my life that I know that's passed away now. I've talked about it on my YouTube channel, but my mom's foster dad was like my grandpa. My mom ran away when she was like 12 or 13 years old. She ran away. She had foster parents. That's like my grandpa. He passed away like 5 or 6 years ago, and he was involved with some, like he had information, and he flew to work like 300 times a year, worked at some underground type thing. And before he died, he saw me on YouTube making videos, and he was a very esoteric thinker. I remember growing up and seeing Edgar Cayce books
Whoa.
like around the house. So he's a very eclectic thinker, and he had to be, whatever he did, he had to be like interviewed 2 or 3 times in order to get into wherever he was. Found out that he was involved with some form of transporting material underground, something. And what he did tell
This
me,
is nuts.
yeah, what he did tell me though is 100%, and I trust this person,
For
and
sure.
that this is what really opened my eyes to like the esoteric stuff, because I have someone from my life that I've known my entire life that I trust, who's telling me a couple years before he died, as his health was starting to decline, that ETs exist, the government knows about it, and if you saw some of the things I've seen, you wouldn't even believe it.
Wow.
And that's what he said. And
Wow.
and there were certain things we couldn't talk about when around him. I couldn't say certain words because he was being bugged, like,
Yeah,
you know.
sure.
So that reference in my life was like somebody that like really opened me up to more of the esoterics, and opened up to like maybe things aren't as they seem, you know. Since 2012, I've felt like there are ETs exist.
For sure.
It's a thing.
For sure.
You know, it has existed for a long time. And I think that ultimately, as much as we are here right now, I think we have connections to other lives that our oversoul might be connected to on different planets. So when some people say, oh, I'm Pleiadian, I'm this, I'm Starseed, we're all multidimensional beings. We all have connections to these different parts because we're internal spiritual beings that have not only lived on Earth. So it's not relevant for us to maybe understand all these layers at once, but I think we're connected. But I think sometimes starseed energy becomes a way of having spiritual grandiosity.
For sure.
Because it's like, I am awake and you're asleep, and I know something you don't, and I am more evolved than you.
For sure.
And not everybody has that perspective, but
Yeah.
it can be a thing, a way of feeling significant, especially when you mix in childhood trauma of not feeling seen and heard and soothed as a kid.
100%.
And trauma sparks awakening, right? So then,
For sure.
but it's like I've had to really look at that because, you know, I believe we are eternal spiritual beings. I believe we have lives on different planes of existence. I believe every night when we go to bed, we wake up in higher states of consciousness, and that what we see in our subconscious is just different energy patterns and themes we're learning that our brain is kind
100%.
of feeding us in our psyche to like integrate. So it's like at the end of our life when we die, it's like I think we wake up at higher states of consciousness. And every night when we go to bed, we do that, but we don't remember.
Practice, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like it kind of puts a different perspective of what life is, what reality is in a way. But a lot of these, to answer your question about the like conspiracy theories, I mean, I think a lot of them might be rooted in somewhat truth.
For sure.
So for some of them, do you know who David Wilcock is?
Yeah.
David Wilcock recently passed away. He took his own life, and it's a sad story to hear. And in 2012, I remember watching some of his stuff because that he was also connected to, we're going to ascend in 2012. We're not going to be here. When he passed away, a lot of his followers and people that follow his stuff are convinced that it was like he was taken out.
For sure.
All these other things. And when I tap into it, what I think, discerning wise, I think he probably did kill himself. He probably did like have something come up for him where his mentally he just wasn't well.
For sure.
But people that like you get so into this perspective of everything is us versus them, and there's all these evil people, which I'm not saying there's not evil things and corporations and stuff, but what I'm saying is it's kind of like a slippery slope because then everything becomes a conspiracy. So we can't accept that somebody that may have good spiritual ideas and very brilliant in some ways may have emotional or psychological mental health issues,
For sure.
right? And like instead of saying that might be a reality, it must be that he did that. He didn't do that. Somebody else did it.
Right.
You know, and then we don't have the actual so it was this whole thing because when it happened, it was all over Facebook. It was everywhere when like I was seeing it. And I remember thinking to myself, like, wow, like that used to be I would probably back in the day have thought that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
oh, they did something. It's instead of just assuming that like something like that can happen to somebody.
Yeah.
You know, and when you have that much attention, and he was dealing with a lot too, from what I understand. I haven't followed him in years. But also there was a perspective of we're just waiting for the next thing to happen, right? It was always like we're waiting for the next thing to happen, the disclosure and all of this stuff, and it takes us out of just being in the moment and doing our own inner work, you know? So that's kind of when I stopped watching a couple of years ago.
For
I mean,
sure.
God, you know, rest his soul, you know, I'm not trying to talk smack on him.
Yeah, for sure.
But I'm just saying, like, that's what I mean. We talk about conspiracy. Those are some of the things I think of sometimes. It's like there's like a range. Some of it's relatable to us, some of it's not, but we can very quickly go off the deep edge of like everything's a conspiracy, the earth is flat, you know, and like all of these things is like, what difference does it make? You know?
It feels like my relationship to conspiracy theories has really grown on me. Like the conspiracy theories have grown on me in the last like since the Epstein files came out.
Yep.
Like are you familiar with Robert Anton Wilson?
No.
So he was one of the really important thinkers to me in my early 20s, and he wrote a fiction book called Illuminatus that he wrote with his friend. And the premise was, what if every conspiracy we've ever heard of were all true at once?
Wow, yeah.
Like, what would reality be like? And one of the things that Robert Anton Wilson says, like after he wrote the book, and he's like, you know, no longer performing the act of trying to make this fictional book, you know, be its own teaching where he could just speak candidly. He's like, what's more likely the case is that there is no grand conspiracy, that's actually the inversion of fundamental Christianity, it's the inversion of God.
Yeah.
That like, we're being taken care of because there's a dude in the sky who has everything mapped out, and all we have to do is give ourselves over to them. That the extreme opposite is how most people relate to conspiracies, as like a pseudo-religious anti-God.
Yeah.
Where what they're still getting is someone has a plan.
Yeah.
Someone's in control. And like you were sharing about like how your stepmom felt, it sucked, but there were limits.
Yep.
Whereas what is much more likely the case, and which is much more terrifying to the people who unconsciously find some solace in the conspiratorial mind frame because it sets some limits, is that we are all unmoored in an ocean of like whatever reality is. It is like the ocean, and anyone who's trying to run a conspiracy, where there are people trying to run conspiracies, like you and I are conspiring to make helpful content for the people who are going to listen. The world is filled with conspiracies. It's just that most suck. Most are against each other. And the few that think any of them, that think that they can control the totality of the ocean, will fail. And we probably don't ever hear about them. But there are cruise ships in the ocean of like well-oiled conspiracies, and most of them are in the form of corporations. You know, like what corporations are able to do in this country are nuts. But my relationship on conspiracies was like, I don't care about the idea. In order for us to get to the idea, the person speaking it to me has to meet some qualifications. And so it's like, okay, do you know what your purpose is in this life? Do you do what you love? Do you talk to your parents? Do you take care of your body? You know, it's like, are you tending to your part of the garden? Before I entertain you trying to convince me that everything I do is a fucking facade because there's lizards. You know, it's like, let's go through this checklist. But then since the Epstein files and like, you know, me actually take like just the surreal. So there's a quote in Dune that I forget who says it, but one of the Fremen is saying to, I believe, Jessica, which is the mother of Paul Muad'Dib.
Yeah.
And the Fremen is saying, forgive our behavior. When you live so long with prophecy, revelation is a shock. And so from a conspiratorial standpoint, nothing in these emails were like new stories.
Right.
But it was prophecy for a long time without any revelation.
Yep.
And then to type in .gov and click enter, and then I read hundreds of emails like from the .gov. Like I wasn't fucking trusting. Like if I saw anything on Instagram or Reddit or whatever that like made me go, I fucking screenshotted. I looked up the motherfucking reference number. I would go type it in just so I didn't repost bullshit, because it's so easy to fake those things. And like, I'm not going to go into the details here, but like the most extreme conspiracy theories involving like Epstein and like, hard R word and killing and then eating, and like reading some of these emails where it's like, dude, it was so disorienting.
Yeah.
And then that kind of like epistemologically kind of opened up my worldview to like let in some new conspiracy stuff with fresh eyes. And so the big rabbit hole I've gone down in the last couple of months is aliens. Like before, my disposition on aliens was like, have you heard of Carl Jung? It could be an archetype, like that was my thing for a long time. And now, the reason I like looking into the alien thing is because there is so much corroborative evidence that I was unaware of my entire life. Like hard evidence that you can look at and fact check on your own, and that it also gives an insight into the like strategies and like game theory dynamics that the clandestine governmental agencies play. Because like, in my opinion, and this is kind of getting off topic, but we're fucking here, is that if the majority are going to do some type of like revolution or some type of renaissance and response to whoever are the people that are really playing the game in a dark way, in my opinion, just in the same way that the Spurs have to do a scouting report of OKC, like if you want any chance to win, we are going to have to do a scouting report of like the CIA and all of the brother and sister agencies that like, because without going too far down any rabbit holes, and I'm not sure like what's your personal, like what are the things you know about but that it appears to be the people who are calling the shots at the highest level that like are the ones that can make, like, again, without going down these rabbit holes, anyone who was pro-Trump when Trump came in, the level of cognitive dissonance you have to look at what he is doing and to feel like he hasn't been completely co-opted by whatever the thing was that he was going in to overthrow, it's evidence that there are people who play the game of life in such a way where other people are basically pawns, and if they want to get that person to do what they want to do, it's just like the checklist is threaten your family. The checklist is, so my conspiratorial worldview has opened up dramatically in the last couple of months, because what my disposition was for the longest time is like, yo, if you're not living the life you want to live, I don't even want to hear you talk about it to me.
Right.
And that was dismissive and it wasn't fair. And now I'm like, it's much weirder than we thought.
Yeah.
But to thread this back to the like unfolding mythos, because I feel like there's a lot of juice here. And then as we go down, a lot of other trailheads will open up. I'm going to try to ignore all the interesting trailheads you open by talking about your conspiracy ideas. And maybe that's like a deep, like into the night, maybe alcohol or something, who knows. But what was your next big major like checkpoint in your story once you left the job, you're doing YouTube full time? Because what tends to yeah, I'll just stop there. What was the next, like, beat of your story?
There's probably two different beats that are coming to mind right now. One is after doing YouTube for so long, I became aware that kind of the 9 to 5 job mentality that I had, where I was working for a 9 to 5 job and kind of felt the pressure to like, do that for so long. I felt like I'd created that for myself as a YouTuber.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
now I'm doing daily,
Yeah.
I did daily videos on YouTube for 3 or 4 years. Never really missed a day. I'd go down to Costa Rica for a week and every day I'd make a video, I just constantly, but I had a belief that if I stop making a video, like if I don't make daily videos, I'm going to lose everything I've created. So I kind of
Wow.
created my own guardrails of like what I have to stay in. And there was a last couple years, the next iteration, once I started to develop like a following online and being able to share what I'm passionate about, was leaning more into running live events and not dropping the identity of being a YouTuber, but moving more into challenging myself towards running live events.
Yeah.
And live events, it's like YouTube has become kind of stagnant for me as far as like for me to make a video by myself in front of a camera is kind of boring.
For sure.
When I'm interacting with people like this or at a live in-person event, it just pulls stuff out of me. I don't have to think about it. I just show up and I enjoy it and it's like way more fun. And about 2 years ago, I recognized that once again, not that I was waiting for someone to put me on, but like, I don't know what I was waiting for, but I was just like waiting to start doing like live events. I didn't feel ready. I needed more things I thought I had to do or accomplish. And then eventually, once again, I said, I'm just going to go for it. And
Was there any trigger around that time?
not in the same way, not in the same, what probably helped me do it is, um, when I would incorporate friends into it, it got a lot easier. Like I do it myself, like I'm running the event, but if I have other friends that were committing to it with me, I always enjoy it way more.
Yeah.
And like last year I ran
Yeah.
an event in London and I knew I was going to do it in like September-ish, but like within a week, within a day of my friend saying he would come, I was like, you'll come along, I'll pay for your expenses, you'll do this, you'll like do this thing. And be a part of it. It was like within a day I booked it, because it was like, then it was like fun. And I think part
That's
of
cool.
the way I work is like, I do find a lot of fulfillment in community and like being connected to people. So that I think made it easier, but more so just like myself telling myself the story that like, now's not the right time. I got to keep waiting. So I started running live events like 2.5 years ago. And after like a year of running a few live events, I then was like, I want to challenge myself more and like push myself to do something new. So that's when I started hot seat coaching people at live events. There weren't many people doing hot seat coaching, like where you literally, because I was telling you before we started this podcast, like I like to just show up and like the flow state kind of takes over. And when it comes to live events, I show up, I'll be doing probably 8 hours a day of speaking and coaching and meditation or whatever's happening. But it takes on a life of its own. But hot seat coaching people, where I have someone that I'm working with, and that relates to the whatever I'm working with that person, it relates to the crowd. That's like a very in the moment thing. And I had to learn how to juggle that, how to do that, how to like best show up energetically for that, how to help people in a new way. And the first time I ever did that, like a year and a half ago, where I brought someone on stage to coach, it was like a lot of, it was like a whole new thing, but I had to do it and get in the reps. And the more I did it, the more comfortable I got and the easier, it became. So that was definitely like an identity shift. And embracing that new me was like, whole identity shift. And now I've been doing that for a year. That's what really lights me up the most. So I find myself, and maybe we'll talk about dreams for a moment here,
Let's go.
because a reoccurring dream that I have, I'd say there's 2 reoccurring dreams that I have. And one has to do with power dynamic, because as a kid, I had someone that had power over me. Things weren't fair and I had to fight for freedom. So there's one dream I'll talk about in a moment. The reoccurring dream that I have is that I'm in some form of the 9 to 5 job. I know I'm a full-time YouTuber. I know I have hundreds of thousands or million plus followers. I know I don't have to be there, But yet there I'm at in the 9-to-5 job, like selling women's shoes. And there's a part of me that maybe misses it. Like, it sounds crazy to say, but like this is a reoccurring dream I have every so often, every like 6 months.
Wow.
That's very vivid to me.
Cool.
And it's like, so that is like a reoccurring dream that I have. And it's like, I teeter between two different realities a lot of times, where right now in my business where I'm at is it lights me up way more to do podcasts like this. And granted, I'm on your podcast. I have other podcasts I'm going on over the next couple of months. And I'm like, oh, I could actually just prioritize going on podcasts because I enjoy it.
Yeah.
You know, I like running live events, obviously. It's not as predictable when you're running live events to whether you're going to get like content that reaches people as much as like having a curated YouTube video that I make. So I'm still trying to like work that into my business in a way. However, it's like YouTube, like forcing myself to make YouTube videos has kind of been this thing that I've teetered on for like 2 or 3 years. And then committing to live events, podcasts, and other styles of content is like another option. And I find myself wanting to like, figure out whatever that is, because I teeter back and forth sometimes. I'll start running live events and the content doesn't do as well. So then I go back to making YouTube videos the old way. And then I freaking hate it after like 7 videos. And then I want to work with people. I like people, but it's creating that system could mean I have to like, I create an in-person thing in LA and then I have people come that there's so many ways to do it.
For sure.
But I kind of teeter between, like, I know my zone of genius is working with people and having people pull content out of me, whether it's having like a content producer of someone that like asks me questions, or it's like actual people I'm coaching, because I actually like helping people too. But it could be a mix of both. But I think because for a year or two, I've kind of toyed around. Like when you look at, I guess, my next level, the people I look up to the most are probably like, I'd like to have a business similar to like Joe Dispenza one day, right? Like running live events. I don't really have to sell anything at the live event. I just do it because I love it. That is like, he's a good embodiment of that. Live meditations I love. That's a good embodiment of that. Tony Robbins I've looked up to since before I was on YouTube. They're both like kind of North Stars energetically of where, in my own way, because obviously I don't want Tony Robbins' lifestyle necessarily. I think I don't want like someone with me at every second of the day, like pushing me into different things because, I don't need that level of success. But I'd like to make a big impact and do what I love without doing things I maybe don't enjoy as much, but have always brought me success and safety, right? So for me, this dream that comes up is like a reflection that I'm back at the 9-to-5 job. I don't have to be there, but I am. And for me, it kind of feels like my interpretation of it, at least, is I'm at that 9-to-5 job. It's kind of like YouTube. It's kind of like the energy of a 9-to-5 job, where I viewed myself for a long time as a YouTuber versus like Tony Robbins and Joe Dispenza. They probably don't see themselves as YouTubers. They're like transformational teachers and facilitators. And I've had such a challenge letting go of the YouTuber role. And then I beat myself up because I'm grateful for where I'm at. But also, I'm not them, so there's also an acceptance. Like, I don't have to, I can be my own, I'm like myself. So I don't have to do just what they're doing, even though the way in which like Joe Dispenza runs his business, for example, I'm like, oh, that would be enjoyable for me to just show up, help people pull content out of me. I run live events. I can't run a live event every weekend, it's like energetically necessarily, but like I like creating content. So that's where I've been at. So that dream coming up to me is like a representation of almost like my hamster wheel. Of staying locked in the hamster wheel, and like I could leave, but I don't. And so, anyways, I thought I'd share that dream with you because that's my dream that comes up.
I love it. So recurring dreams are super important, and I can feel that you can feel that. So I'm going to take you through like a full dream opening process, because the people want me to interpret their dreams for them, but the real will be when it comes through you. So step 1 is, can you tell us in first person present tense? So like I am in a warehouse or whatever, as opposed to I was in a warehouse. From start to finish, the last time you had this dream, and just go off of your gut. You obviously can't remember all of it, but just like I'm in and try to keep it first person present tense, because that actually
brings back more of the memories and the energy of it.
And it will surprise you once you start to, So
I'm back at Nordstrom's in women's shoes. More specifically, brass plum shoe department, which is where I started, which is like the cheaper shoes that you get commission for. And I'm in the back stock room, grabbing shoes, walking down the stairs. I'm walking up to the cash register to ring somebody up. I'm looking around at my coworkers. I'm seeing the customers that are there too. I'm feeling like I remember in a moment that I'm like a full-time YouTuber. I help people for a living and like have created like a large online following. I've created abundance for myself. And I'm back here. And there's been times where in that dream too, I'm there and it's almost like I just come back to work part-time just for like a couple hours a day or a couple days a week. And it's like I recognize that I don't need to be there, but I am.
What is the emotional quality throughout the dream? So like, what do you feel when you are in the store? Is it like a sense of nostalgia?
Nostalgia.
Okay,
I go to I will walk into a Nordstrom sometimes just for the nostalgia.
cool. So walk me through the dream, but from an emotional standpoint of how it felt in the dream. And some of these emotions might be fucking weird, but if you can just connect to what is the emotional level of this? Yeah.
Yeah, like there's like a nostalgic, like almost like familiarity and like connection to where I'm at, being there. And not necessarily like maybe not an anger, but maybe like a frustration that I'm still there,
Mm-hmm.
that I don't have to be there. And it's kind of like, why am I still here? And then I might kind of beat myself up and feel frustrated with myself that I'm still there. So I feel kind of, I don't know if I feel trapped. That's normally where my mind would go. Oh, I feel trapped in the job. But it's like, I don't really feel trapped. I feel like I'm just, I kind of choosing to go back,
I see.
but frustrated with myself because I keep choosing it.
So what is the ending of this dream? Like, what's
Normally
the
it's like a
last thing that
snapshot.
happens?
There's
Okay.
normally not like, it's not normally like an ending where like I leave the job and run away or anything.
No, for sure.
I'm just there. It's like a snapshot of a memory. My dreams aren't always like super linear where I'm like, oh, then I
Yeah.
do this and I go to another dream. It's like little snapshots.
Cool.
And then I'm like, oh, that dream happened again.
What's important is what was the very last thing you remember before you wake up from this recurring dream? Like, what's the very last like thought or action?
Like, I don't need to be here anymore.
Okay.
Like, why am I
beautiful.
here?
Yeah. And so are there any prominent characters other than you? Or are they all kind of like a part of the
They're all part of the dream, but it's
Cool.
not like, like last night I had a dream with this guy at Barneys that was the manager, and I never liked him.
So we can
And
definitely unpack that
that's a
one and
different
have
dream.
fun. But
Yeah.
what it feels like, so one of the main functions of dreams appears to be to call out our blind spots.
Yeah.
Like it's the ultimate ally if we can learn how to speak the language of symbols. And it's just like you have a super intelligent homie who can
Yeah.
only talk through images that it can telepathically send you.
Yeah.
That's the only way it can talk to you.
Yep.
And because of the nature of our conscious mind, which is like if you imagine a lighthouse,
Mm-hmm.
the nature of a lighthouse is that the other 320 degrees of where it could rotate at any point is black.
Yeah.
But that's what makes it useful, is that it can
Right.
highlight a little sliver.
Yeah.
Our consciousness is like the lighthouse, and our unconscious is the whole environment that's in the black. And it's like our dreamer, the thing that generates our dreams, because it is a you want to talk about miracles. Like what dreams are is fucking insane.
Yeah.
That every night when we're unconscious,
Yep.
there's something inside
Yeah.
generating realities that, like, if we were a baseball player and hitting the ball is like realizing we're in a dream, we're batting 0.00001%.
Right.
Like that's how good of an artist the dreamer is.
Mm.
But so it's trying to help us see blind spots.
Yes.
I think you've you already know what this dream means. And the way that I think of recurring dreams is like, my main recurring dream that happens in adulthood is that I'm back at school. I'm about to graduate college. I'm like so proud of myself. And then I realize, oh, fuck, I had a math class
Oh, yeah.
that I haven't gone to.
Yeah.
And then I feel this like the sinking in my gut, like, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to graduate, because in my real life, I dropped out of all of my classes my first year of college because I didn't know how to try, because I was smart enough in high school where I could just not fucking try, and it was like C's and B's. I go to college. I was overwhelmed. I dropped out of all my classes. I was on a scholarship. I basically had to lie to everyone in my life that I had just stopped going to classes, and I had this big fear all the way through trying to graduate, because I had to basically retake all of the classes I had failed, plus extra, to graduate on time. So anyways, that recurring dream is something that comes up in my life when there is like a business / occupational thing that I'm looking away from.
Interesting.
You know, and it's my psyche using my memories to be like, yo, you're doing this habit again.
Right.
You're doing this behavior again.
Yeah.
And so what it definitely feels like your dreamer is trying to show you is like, dog, you're free.
Right.
And you're treating this like it's a thing you have to do.
Yeah.
You know, and like, I think it's that simple of like a recurring dream. And I think you already know what that means. What's more fun is we can get into the dream you had last night.
Yeah.
So if you want to, you can. What I tell people to like always do is like, if you want me to work with a dream, first person, present tense, from the start of the dream till the end of the dream, try not to give any context and just like trust the process will reveal context if it needs to.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks for that explanation, by the way. So I also agree that dreams are like this magical thing that like nobody uses as a tool. And every night, like, it's one of the reasons I don't drink alcohol, smoke weed, do caffeine. I don't do anything that affects my sleep.
Yeah.
Because I love my dreams so much.
Yeah.
And
it's why I stopped smoking weed.
Yep. Yeah, because it's when you stop smoking, you start getting dreams are a little weird at first, but eventually your dreams come back.
Yeah.
You know? But that's how important it is, you know, the subconscious, just in general. As far as so I'm trying to remember now. All I remember from the dream is I am in like the office with this guy that I used to work with who is the store manager. I never really liked him at all. I don't even remember. Honestly, I don't remember. I don't know why earlier I think I had more memory of it.
Interesting.
Or something. Let me share I'll share with you kind of like a dream theme that maybe is like, I think related to this now that I'm talking about it. There's a pattern dynamic I have around things not being fair and me needing to fight for freedom. So one time in a dream, I was at a gas station and there was somebody that got in front of me and cut me in line, and it wasn't fair, just like cut me blatantly in line. And it was like, felt not fair. And I was like, I had the opportunity to stand up for myself and say, hey, that's not cool. Right. And I don't remember what happened in that dream, but in a future dream, there was a version of that where I actually said something or then like actually fought back in some way. There's also dreams I have sometimes where someone might be chasing me and I'm running away.
Classic.
And then there's also dreams where I know that like a week later, I'll have a similar dream to that. They're chasing me, I'm running away, but then I stand up for myself and start fighting.
Huge. Yeah.
So that's like, that to me is like the progression of like, instead of me a victim of the circumstance, allowing it to happen, expressing myself, which is like a big epiphany for someone that's not expressing it, but then also being able to fight. Because as a kid, fighting was not like, when you're growing up as a kid with someone that's very controlling and manipulative, your default is normally fawning. So you got fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Fawning over fighting. The one time I did stand up to my ex-stepmom, I got in a lot of trouble for it when I pushed back, and I got in even more trouble.
Like the time when dad spanks you and you're like, I'm not crying, it doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
It's like, that's the worst possible. Yeah.
I told my girlfriend recently, a memory that I have was like when I would get spanked with the belt. I remember one time I was like told, don't clench. Doesn't count unless if you're clenching.
Whoa.
So I'm thinking to myself, like, why would it count? Like, I can't clench, right? But I remember thinking of the psychology or the symbol of that. Do you know what I mean? Like, not in a victim way. Like, I thought of asking my dad, because, my dad and I have a great relationship now. But, like, that was the dynamic as a kid. Like, don't clench. Like, what did that does it mean something symbolic? I don't know. But,
I think at, like, a intuitive level, the clenching is you're in resistance to this punishment, and this punishment is actually for you.
Yeah.
And so it's like, don't brace.
Yeah.
Like, don't,
Yeah.
Fascinating. Okay, so a couple of things here. Like, two really important things about dreams is that, like, most of us in our waking life, especially in this culture, we feel things that are too big for how we think it's safe to contort our face. Like, the way that I think about this is, like, all of us have, like, a playing deck cards worth of different emotions we could show on our face.
Yeah.
Most people are working with, like, 4 cards.
Right, yeah.
For, like, almost the entirety of their life. It's like 4 cards. And then whenever they see someone play a new card, if it's on screen, it's safe.
Yeah.
But if it's outside, if it's at Walmart, it can be scary. And if we see someone quickly oscillate between cards we're not allowed to play, we call that crazy.
Yeah.
We call that insane, and we put them away. In order to be healthy, like, if you think of us as like a guitar, like, if we don't play those strings, they get out of tune and, like, mud and can, like, ossify over them. So you have to play them. Our dreams will give us opportunities to play emotional strums that, like, got pinged in our waking life that we, for whatever reason, didn't give time to. And so this is a thing that Jung would call the compensatory function, which is where if there's a repressed thing in waking life, our dream will give us the opposite, and the ridiculousness or the intensity of the opposite is actually a comment on how out of alignment our waking life interpretation of the thing was. And so I'll give an example to kind of break this down. If you have a dream where you're, like, walking to your beloved and then you're falling through a trap door on a bridge and you're falling down clouds and you're surrounded by, like, the Himalayan mountains. Like, I've had a dream like that when I was in college. That is very likely a commentary on, in your waking life, you are so fucking inflated in your response to your partner's whatever, that your dreamer, to help you out, is, like, gonna like, dude, we have to drop you from a mile in the sky to like try to bring some balance to how you're acting in your waking life. And so if you have a dream where you're being cut in line, it might be that your dreamer is trying to let you know, like, yo, someone in your waking life that day, although your conscious mind was like, oh no, like, it's all good. What the dreamer is commenting on is, like, someone transgressed a boundary.
Yes.
And then if you have a dream where it extends and you actually, like, fucking say something, it's likely the dream reflecting, like, the boundary was not only crossed, but it was, like, a part of you wanted to do something but didn't. You know, it kind of helps give you that experience. And so that's
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I think I can see how it's like the more you also learn about dream interpretation and dream work, it's like your psyche knows that you're learning about dreams.
Yes.
So then it's like
so
you get
cool.
more tools
100%
to work with it, which is really cool. So it's like, one thing I used to do every morning when I wake up is I would roll over in bed and then write my dreams of everything I remember. Normally there's 2 or 3 dreams. I just like scribble it down as quickly as possible so I don't forget. And it's just there. And I could still to this day go back to that dream journal and look at the dreams, and some of them just, like, pop in your mind. Like, whoa, now I can remember it, you know? I need to start doing that again. I kind of fell off from doing that, but that is, like, it's kind of cool that your psyche knows that you're learning about dream interpretation. And that's why it's, I think, important to learn to interpret your own dreams too, because you can go into a book or online, But like what something means to you might be different than something means to me.
Exactly.
So it might give me a different symbol than it gives you. So you could say this is your dream, and I think this is what it means, but it might not be
No.
close at all because your meaning is different than and to your symbols than me.
100%. And this point is one of the only things that like Jung was like super clear on. Like if you read Jung directly, all you have to do is read him long enough to find him say something that you could pull as a quote to contradict some
Yeah.
other thing. It was kind of like the nature of his thought. One of the few things he was super clear on is that dream dictionaries are bullshit.
Yeah.
And I have multiple quotes that I can't remember, but I have them in my notes, like on my computer, of like just him being like a fucking begrudged old man, being like his version of roasting people who use
Yeah.
like dream dictionaries. And so to your point, it's not a synchronicity if you go on Google and you type in, what does it mean if I see a cardinal? Because you're not seeing what God is trying to help you see. You're seeing the best SEO'd web page
Right.
that is trying to optimize for time on page to sell AdSense.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and that the core thing that the Jungian school teaches is what is called the association method, but it's that, like you spoke to, your psyche, like your dreamer is here
Yeah.
right now. It's in the room, you
Yeah.
know? It's always in the room. And from like a technical, scientific, like cognitive psychology standpoint, you could think of the dreamer as like the unadulterated right hemisphere,
Mm-hmm.
just the like spontaneous, imagistic feeling tone
Yeah.
thing. And so the core technique is like, if you want to understand what a symbol in your dream means, it's as easy as what I'm about to say, and almost no one does it because it takes just a little bit of effort to get out of the left hemisphere and actually get into the right hemisphere.
Yep.
But it's bring to mind in the same way that I say, like, imagine you have an apple in your hand and you're about to bite it. Like that attempt of consciousness, bring to mind the dream image that you're curious about.
Yeah.
So like, for example, like if you imagine your coworker, like, or your ex-coworker that fucking pisses you off, like bring to mind what he was like in the dream. And then like have a piece of paper and write down the first spontaneous mental arising. And like you talked about earlier, people who are paying attention at home, this is literally meditation.
Yeah.
It is a style of meditation that dream work brings out of you if you actually do it in a way where you're not just trying to go to like YouTube or, you know, to Google of what it means.
Yep.
And what they teach is like, write down the first spontaneous thing that comes up. So like when you think of that coworker in the context of the dream you had last night, what's the first thing that comes up? It can be a word or an image.
Controlling.
And then you would write that down and then you would do it 5 times.
Yeah.
And so then like, what's the next one that comes up?
Sharp.
Third one.
Frustrating.
Fourth one.
Demeaning.
Fifth one.
Condescending.
And so now that you have that, one of the things, like the thing that made Jung famous in his early life that kind of got him renown across the world is he created what is called the word association test.
Yep.
Which is still used now. And actually Scientology stole it from Jung. And it's what they do where they have you like have a galvanic skin response thing. And then they'll say a bunch of words and they'll track which words have the longest pause and which words have the highest increase in like your like the heat on your hand.
Oh, wow.
Which is, and so Jung would have 100 words and he would say like mom, dad, and you would have to say the first thing that comes to your mind. He would time how long it took for that word to pop up. He would also write down if there was any measurable like sweat response in the hands. And he got to the point where he published papers on being able to like identify if someone was committing fraud
Yeah.
at work. He was able to identify who a thief was in a burglary case, like from using this
Oh, wow.
technique.
Yeah.
But so, did you notice which of the 5 words had the longest pause? For
The third?
it was the 4th. It was
Oh,
demeaning.
the what? The meaning. Yeah.
Demean.
Demean, yeah.
What's really interesting is, I've done this with thousands of people. It's almost always the 4th.
Wow. Interesting.
And I don't know why, but it's like people are able to,
Yeah, the first 2 or 3 are
second
easy.
one, third one, but it's also not the 5th. It's like 85% of the time it's the 4th. And so then what the Jungian dream interpretation technique teaches is you circle the one that had the longest response time. It doesn't always have to be the one with the longest response time, but the way they teach it is like the one that has the most evocative response.
Yeah.
And that's often correlated with the hesitation on the word.
Yeah.
And so then once you do that, you can do that with anything in your dream.
Mm.
Any content in the dream, if you just trust that you have a right hemisphere that's awake, it
Yeah.
will generate content, and then you can pay attention to the one that has the longest hesitancy.
Yeah.
And then you ask yourself, what part of me does this represent? And then you do the exact same thing where you
Right.
go through the 5
Mm.
spontaneous things. So if
Yeah.
you want to, for funsies, when you take demean and you ask yourself, what part of me does this represent? What's the first either thought or image that comes up?
The meaning? I think of like someone on a pedestal looking down at somebody else.
All right, cool. What's the next one?
Like just images?
It can be thought or image. It's whatever is the first thing. So this question will tend to be like, oh, that thing I said, or oh, that thing that I did, because when you're asking yourself, and this is what most people do not do with dream work, which is what part of this character who demeans is in me.
Right.
And so then when you ask that question and we start to do the 5 associations, what will tend to come up in people's consciousness is like, oh, fuck that conversation I had.
Yeah.
So it tends to be a combo of language with image with emotion, but it could also just be straight up language. It could be straight up emotion, and it could be straight up image.
Okay.
So we have the image of the person on top talking down. What's the next one that comes to mind?
Demeaning.
And I invite you to imagine what he looked like in the dream.
Oh, yeah. Just like angry pointing finger. And what am I looking for? Like
Just what
images come to mind?
Yeah, or thoughts.
Yeah, like
it's
him
just
pointing.
whatever, yeah.
Yeah, him pointing finger, accusations, feeling worthless, like I can't leave, like I am stuck.
And what's the last one?
That I'm not allowed, that I'm not in a position to have a perspective because of my totem pole, working
Yeah.
for somebody else.
Yeah. Which one of those feels like it has the most the question we're looking for to answer here is, what does this symbol represent in me?
Yeah.
That what is very likely the case is that if I was listening to you, I could feel that there was a somatic opening when you talked about I'm not allowed to have a point of view on this because of where I stand.
Right.
But what that would confess is that there's an internalized demeanor.
Yeah.
That
For
is
sure.
doing that to you, being like, well, you can't speak up about this because you don't have X.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think there for sure is a demeanor of somebody that is like a part of myself that controls situations that controls like circumstances in my life that allows me to then feel um like I'm right about reality,
Mm.
like I'm right about people, like it's almost
Mhm.
like I get payoffs from it in a
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times, like when I look at like even though the control left my life when I was younger, I became the controller, So that's kind of the connection to the dream too,
Right.
because
Yeah.
I'm the one that forces myself to make videos the way that I
Yeah.
do. I'm the one
Mm.
doing that. Like when it comes to counting macros and working out and like pushing myself,
For
I
sure.
have a tendency to overdo it all. I don't replenish myself enough and I overwork. And that is like,
Right.
it's me controlling life, controlling the dynamic is that control pattern. So the very person that I like resented growing up becomes the person and the part of myself that like has to keep the party going a certain way.
Yeah.
So for sure, I'm sure there's demeaning, um, condescending part of myself that is like a criticizer,
For sure.
of myself.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is the one that gets the most abused is the one in us,
Yeah.
The an interesting one to connect to, because this is by far one of the most, common ones, is when
Hmm.
someone is being chased and they're running.
Yeah.
And, what they teach in, like, the Jungian lens is, are you familiar with active
Yes.
imagination? Okay,
Yes.
so it's that, like, if you had a dream tonight where you were being chased, what you would be prompted to do is like, "Okay, we're gonna get you into an active imagination state.
Yep.
You're gonna go back into the running, and instead of running, you're gonna turn around."
Yes.
The thing that's super interesting is that, for people who don't have an integrated, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, but it's like integrated anger, which is a fundamental requirement for being a human, will display itself as like self-respect and then like what you push back on if someone infringes upon.
Yeah.
Like that the integration of aggression is to be able to say no.
Right.
And so many people psychologically are just running,
Yeah.
like, because they don't even have an integrated aggression to face the thing. And so
Yep.
it's just running. But then the next developmental stage is to turn around and kick its fucking ass.
Right.
Like, is to just like
Yeah. Like fight.
fight. And what I find is that, so the third stage in the Jungian model is like the apotheosis of turning around with compassion. And that whatever the thing is that felt like a threat when you weren't
Yeah.
facing it, when you turn around, it's either like a amputee, it's like someone with like a
Yep.
learning disability, it's like a burnt
Hmm.
victim, it's someone who has cancer, and that what it wants is to feel the vitality of being connected to like the core of who you are, and
Yeah.
that's why it was chasing you. But a lot of people in the spiritual space, I find, especially people who have like prayers and mantras and
Yeah.
rituals that they do to constantly protect their energy, they can get stuck at the in-between stage,
Yeah.
which is they're just kicking everything's ass in their fucking dream, and there's no, like, the, like, Christ-like, like, "Come here, my son, you have always
Yeah.
been loved?"
Yeah.
And I'd love to just get your thoughts on that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it is a common thing is the ability to like look at our ability to express anger in the spiritual space is something that is very tricky when you're a kid and you've learned to repress all that
For
energy
sure.
as a survival mechanism to getting by. So it's like as a kid, subconsciously, we're always kind of asking ourselves this question of like, who do I need to be
For
to
sure.
gain mom and dad's love and approval? And if who you had to be as a kid was quiet, not be angry, not be super talkative, or you had to be perfect. So maybe you had to talk a lot or over explain yourself. Whatever that is, that became like the crystallized lens through which to see reality. So in spiritual development, the way that I think about it is it's like I think about it as three different stages as you kind of moving up the stage of becoming more individualized.
Mhm.
It's like on one hand, you have that of codependency, which is where a lot of people get trapped in a leaf in the wind of like other people's energies. So it's like you might resent somebody else that's like overstepping boundaries. You might take it because it's who you feel you need to be in order to be loved and approved of. And you kind of stay stuck in trauma bonds, trauma loops, anxious attachment like patterns. And there's not a lot of expression of anger happening. And the next level, this is the level of being an individual. So you go from codependent to independent. And in independence, that's where you start to tap into a lot of power. So in independence, this is where people go from needing somebody else, trying to control the dynamic, which creates resistance, to being independent. And now you don't need a man. You don't need a woman. You got yourself. You will instead create a substitute of a big business. You'll be able to provide for yourself. So the way that I think about it is it's kind of like fawn and freeze are at the bottom level of codependency, maybe more of an inclination. And then you have like fight and flight in the independent stage. And in fight or flight, this is the independent stage where you then start becoming like, I don't need anybody else. I will create business and success. I can make it myself. And flight can also be like overworking, over-focused on certain aspects of life. And in that level, I think times people can get stuck in it. This is where also on YouTube, I have hundreds of videos talking about letting go and how powerful letting go is. But letting go is powerful at certain stages, and letting go is actually toxic at different stages. Because once you become an independent person, and you don't need a man, you don't need a woman, you're good with yourself, it then becomes a cop-out towards connection. Because the next most uncomfortable thing to do is actually lead into the third level, which is the level of interdependence. It's the level to where you're not at the level to where like, I can't trust, I need like this. That's also where there's a lot of anxious attachment style like dance as well. But that's where I think when you're talking about the second layer of anger, I think that people can get stuck because it's like, well, I'll just let go. I watched a video on letting go. I'm just going to let go. Aaron said, I watched a video of Aaron's just let go. Well, letting go will keep you safe in the cave of yourself and of creating your own success. But many times the next stage of development is actually leaning into vulnerability. It's leaning into connection. It's learning like at that third stage, you can express yourself, be in your power, and not collapse your frame for someone else, not need to fix them. The way that I think about it is it's like at the second level, you might not need anybody else. The first level, you're like, I need you. The second level is like, you don't need anybody. You just need yourself. The third level is like, I choose to be with you. I choose to be connected, but I don't need to abandon myself to be with you. So for men, many times, I think it's the integration of becoming truth. Like you have a dedication to truth. As in the masculine energy, to be dedicated to truth is very attracted to the feminine. It's like when you see the symbol of like the guy going off to war and the woman's like, don't leave, stay with me. If he were to say, you know what, honey, you're right, I'm going to stay with you.
Fuck the Nazis, I'll stay.
You're right. And then there would be that resentment forever, right? And on the other side of that, it's like women may want love, but women embody that love. It's like at the second levels, there's more of a fighting to get what you want, and you're starting to commit to it. But at the third level, you are truth and you are love. So it's not dependent on what the other person does because you stay in your own frame of reality. You stay embodied in the love regardless of what the other person is doing. So it's like you have more compassion. So when the way that I see it, as far as codependency, independency, that's the kind of what you're mentioning with like anger, where people stay at the anger because it's safe. Like anger is like you've crossed a boundary, and I feel safe when you aren't like brushing up against that. So I feel safe in my room. I feel safe focusing on business, and I don't need you.
For sure.
And that is also gets very lonely because then it's like I don't need you, and it's like I don't need anybody. I just need myself. But we came here to have relational connection to people. And that's what really makes life rich.
For sure.
So I think the third stage is the interdependent stage, where we focus on vulnerability and connection. We focus on embodying those emotions, embodying what we're learning. And when we're really at a stage to where we can express anger if it comes up, but not need to change the other person, that's when we're at a true level of integration. It's where we can express it and not worry so much about the rejection of it, because we realize that we're not rejecting ourselves, but we get to a place to where, like, we don't need it. And there's one quick story I'll share about this. And I think all together, like, this was an experience that I had to have, but I can see now that I would have done this differently.
Yeah.
I had this experience where in my life now, I have a successful business that I love. I travel the world doing what I love. I don't have many versions of authority in my life, like telling me what to do, because I own my own business.
For sure.
One area that this creeps in was actually a house here in Austin that I rented for like a year. There was a landlord,
Right.
a lord of land who owns the land and can tell me what to do. And I rented a house from this lady. Ironically, it was a lady who was the authority. And there's this beautiful house in Spanish Oaks. And I lived there for like a year. Really expensive house, beautiful house. And I rationalized it as like, okay, the lady's kind of nuts, or I could tell there's like red flags there, but I'm not going to listen to it because it's such a nice house. And there weren't many houses on the market.
Yeah.
So this lord of land
That's so funny.
allowed me to live, I lived there for a year. And the first couple months, they were like really like anxious about things. Don't touch this, don't touch that. It was partially furnished. It was like this, it was like, I could just tell it's just super stiff, super perfectionist. And towards the end of living there, I was getting ready to pack my stuff into storage and to travel. And stuff started to come up where I could see it was like getting out of that house would be kind of a challenge, because I could tell this lady had really high expectations. I lived there for a year, but I was in and out traveling. Like I believe I was a great tenant. I don't have kids, don't have dogs or animals or anything. Right. And it was like it was a beautiful home, but like I could just tell the expectations were really high. When I went to move out, the expectations were so high that like every little detail was like going to be used against me. So for example, there was inside one of the master bathrooms, there was a little speck of this drink that I would drink, little speck of this drink that like wouldn't come out of the granite. You could barely see it, but it was there. And the expectation was that in order to get like that was there, I caused it to happen. I lived there for a year and spent a lot of money per month to live in this house, like ridiculous. But because there was a speck there, the expectation was you need to completely replace the granite countertop, which is $3,500.
That is insane.
Now, not only that, it needs to match the other side. So I had to pay $3,500 for one, $3,500 for the other, to pay $7,000 to replace both sides of this granite because there's a little speck that you could hardly see. And I'm like, this doesn't feel fair, right? That's my core story, right? This doesn't feel fair. There was also, I signed the contract, and there's a landscaper. I wasn't a landscaper. They paid for a landscaper to be there. But there was an agave plant outside that died. I thought that the landscaper was going to pay for it, but not pay for it, but take care of it. Basically, it died. I had to pay $3,000 for that agave plant. So at this point, I'm feeling like I'm being taken advantage of.
For sure.
It got to this place to where it was a very uncomfortable conversation that I had to have, where I basically had to express to this person that like this was extremely unfair, not appropriate. Like this doesn't like equal what you're asking, is like not appropriate, is what I kept saying. Even the cleaner that they made me use was afraid of her. Everyone was afraid of her. Her husband, whose name was Michael, same name as my dad, was afraid of her, which is very interesting, right?
Wow.
So I have to have this conversation with her where I basically say like, hey, this is not, basically a $20,000 security deposit was in on the house. And I didn't get any of that back because of all these issues, which were really like issues. You know what I mean? Like they were like things that I don't think I should have had to pay. I had to have a conversation with her where I had to express this wasn't, but when I went to go have that conversation, it was like very tense. I had to wake myself up and remember like who I am in a way. I'm like, wait, I'm like a good tenant. I'm a successful person. I can express myself. Like I was on eggshells around her. I was like, I don't have to be on eggshells, but I had to acknowledge the part of myself that felt like I did. And then I had to realize I can still have this conversation anyways. So I had a conversation with her, got on the phone with her, very uncomfortable conversation. After about 10 minutes, we weren't getting anywhere. It was like bickering, she was just arguing and it got very toxic. So I got off the phone eventually. And I can tell now, I had the conversation just to kind of prove to myself that I could stand up for myself and that I could express myself. Looking back, I could see a way in which where either I wouldn't attract that circumstance again because maybe it was having me integrate a part of myself that was normally afraid to express. But the other aspect of it is I don't know if I necessarily need to have that conversation. But from that third layer, it's like that conversation may not have really even been necessary.
Yeah.
And in an interesting way, there was some compassion that I built for her in the sense that, like, not that this is the spiritual bypassing part of myself that's like, oh, there's a part of myself that was angry, but there was a part of myself that recognized that to live in that level of perfectionism, there was a part of her that was probably also afraid of the next tenants to move in to think that she was a slob because there was a little speck you could hardly see on top of the countertop. It was a mark in her perfectionism, so didn't mean that it was right and like I wasn't mad about it. I was still angry when that happened, but I could understand it more in the same way that she so similar to the memory of my ex-stepmom. It was like I could understand it a little bit more.
For sure.
So I thought that was an interesting way of relating to the dynamic.
Yeah.
It was also related to the way in which I dealt with conflict. Before also during this time, I was having my assistant deal with the conflict a lot, right? And part of that I remember hearing from my dad growing up, where he's like, "I just don't want to deal with it. It's easier to just not deal with it." And that was like that was his way of dealing with the conflict. Is like, she's so crazy, it's easier not to deal with. Maybe that's true at a certain level, but I could tell that growing up, it's like, you're being called to stand up for yourself or to stand up for your kids, right? So for myself, I had my assistant dealing with it, and that was easier. But I was like, you know what? I think I have to actually deal with this. I think that I have to actually be the one to like express it, even though it sucks and it's annoying.
Yeah.
I have the luxury of having an assistant that can deal with it, but like, I have to do this. And then I did it, and like, I don't know how necessary it was, but I felt more confident in my ability to handle like really hard to deal with people, and knowing that like I don't have to collapse my frame. I can express myself. I don't have to fix her if she's feeling uncomfortable. I could have probably took that to court and but like it would have cost just as much
For sure.
in like lawyer fees and stuff. So I'm like, okay, this is like a learning lesson, I guess.
Yeah.
And
it definitely sounds like someone who spent the security deposit and had to find reasons to justify not paying it back.
It could have been.
And also,
yeah,
the almost like built-in compassion that I have for, let's just say like tightly wound older people. And it's almost exclusively women in my personal experience, but it's not just that. Is all of our parents endured like trauma that they didn't pass on to us. Like, we got like a
percentage of it.
Exactly. It's like they were able to wash some of the grime out. But like, anyone here who's listening who hasn't done this, if you still have a relationship with your parents where you can ask them what their childhood was like, when I heard my parents' story, it was just like, oh my God, thank you.
Yeah.
Like, both of you. Oh my God. And that like people who have that level of perfectionism, there is a little girl inside of her that is bound inside of a cage, stuck inside of a dungeon that hasn't fucking gotten heard in 50 plus years.
Yep.
I can't believe we're already at time. There's going to have to be a part 2 and a part 3 and a part 4, but to close this out, what I'd love to give you the chance to really feel into is, one, if you could make a post on YouTube or Instagram that everyone would see, like today, what would it be? And then 2, if you could give a specific challenge or invitation to the people listening to like do something, what would it be?
Yeah. So, if I could make a post today that's for everybody to see, it'd have something to do with finding your way of relating to something greater than you, what some people call God or the divine. I remember the way that you and I first started talking is you asked me like what my favorite books were. And Autobiography of a Yogi is one of my favorite books of all time. And Paramahansa Yogananda, who's known for bringing yoga to the West, he came here like not speaking any English really that much. And yet he gave thousands of live talks where like energy, like God would like flow through and he'd be able to like kind of not necessarily channel, but be able to really express with this trust in the divinity of like the message coming through, and thousands of people would get together to listen to him, and like auditoriums and stuff like that. But for me, his symbol of how much he has a connection to God or something greater than himself is something that I find very inspiring. And I think that with the stuff that, like the way in which I want to show up more and more in the world as, is somebody that really becomes like almost like an empty vessel for energy to flow through, where it's not so much like the ego identity of who I am doing. You know, I very much believe that like to the level to which I can surrender to an energy greater than myself is the level to which I'll have that divine energy flow through me. So I try my best to not take credit for like the information or like what comes through, but also have like this balance of appreciation for, you know, because that can sometimes also leak into not having confidence in yourself.
For sure.
But who's the self? It becomes this whole like rabbit hole. But there's this analogy I really like that I heard like last year that I've been saying a lot, and that is, can you make a plant grow? Can you make a plant grow? And to really contemplate that, because we know logically that like you can water the plant, you can put the plant in the sun, you can sing to the plant, you can do all these things to the plant, but ultimately, are you the one that makes it grow? And it can be very relieving to realize you can't. Yeah. God does that. The divine does that. Something beyond you does that.
100%.
And very often, I think people get trapped in trying to make the plant grow. They're trying to like make themselves have kids. They're trying to make themselves do all of these things. The business needs to grow. All of these things need to happen. But your job is to set up the conditions. And to set up the conditions might mean to do inner reflection. It might mean to connect to your dreams more.
Yeah.
To do this your own self-reflection here. It might mean to integrate parts of yourself that you blame others for, you might have inside of yourself. You might be learning patience. You might be learning these themes that sometimes we put the burden of like, that's just the way reality is. Sure. When in fact, it's a reflection of like, there's a surrender to something greater than ourselves, but realizing our job is to set up the conditions. So the conditions might mean to let go of outcome, but to focus on showing up, having more fun with the process. It allows you to let go of the pressure of needing to make it happen.
For sure.
So
I love that.
So yeah, letting go of needing to make the plant grow, having more fun with the process. And what was the last question?
If you could give like a challenge, like an activity for the people listening to go do, what would it be?
Go have a conversation that you have been putting off. Vulnerability is what opens up connection between you and other people. And a lot of times we say, oh, I'm just going to let go of this person. I'm just going to let go of this thing. Transformation happens on the other end of vulnerability and expression.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times in my life, over and over again, when I have something I've been harboring and not expressing, it stays suppressed underneath the surface. When I express it and I share it, it's when I feel lighter, but also it gives someone else an opportunity to connect to their own vulnerability. 100%. You stop dancing around the issue. You stop dancing around unprocessed energy. So vulnerability, have a conversation, express yourself to someone else. Have a conversation you've been holding off with your parents maybe. I remember the first time with my dad, I told him like I forgave him for something. After a plant medicine journey, I had this insight and I realized I'd been harboring something. And when I forgave him and held that energy with him, it caused a big opening, crying, expression. It was uncomfortable, but it was very transformative. So
Beautiful.
That conversation, I think, can be so freeing for people.
All right. So to you listening to this that thinks that what was just said doesn't apply to you, go have that conversation today.
Yeah.
Aaron, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me on, brother. Appreciate you.